And now we're officially live, and it's gone correctly this time. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to a Scum Live. I'm Adam, and for some reason, it decided to record the exactly wrong parts of my screen. I didn't change any of my settings. It wasn't like I had anything wrong. It should have been on this screen, but for some reason, the hotkey didn't work, and I had to restart everything, which is always a bit annoying.
Yes. Hello there, what few viewers we have. I'm Greg, and I'm the one who actually found who's most especially interested in the book for this spooktacular
Yeah,
vampire
this is
book.
a very
I'm
different book.
I'm Techpriest, and this is a vampire book, but it's not the kind of vampire book I was expecting.
yeah, most people, hell,
Adam didn't expect it either. When I
until
told him I found a vampire book, he only a few days ago he thought it was something else.
I was hoping for the one with vampire Louis Pasteur, but
I don't remember that one either. I just remember he said he had a vampire book. I didn't expect it to be this one.
yeah.
Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Knights Dark Masters.
We
The sad thing is I could totally see.
Tech, if I could stomach an episode of Changing Breeds, you can stomach an episode of this.
look, changing breeds in this are on different levels.
Yeah, this
actually
actually
seems
yes, one of these. Yes, one of these is actually good.
Yeah, changing breeds.
Oh wow.
No.
Wow.
This is obviously the better made book by far. I mean,
it's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. That's always
it's fantasy
high
they actually make things above average quality.
It's a shame they went the way of the dodo in terms of making anything not card related, huh?
You got business industry business.
So you're the most familiar. Where do we start? Do we start with the prey or
well,
anywhere else?
It's actually the introduction isn't actually a bad way to start because it does give you a brief overview of how vampires fit into the world of fantasy, because they were previously they were really not touched upon in any of the other works before this beyond like mentionings.
Oh, in fantasy roleplay or just fantasy roleplay in general? Okay.
Fantasy and role. Obviously, for the army books, they were fleshed out.
So introduction.
Fun fact: the vampire counts were actually the first faction to have a named character. That was what's his name with
Heinrich Kemmler.
Kemmler, yeah, I was about to say it was the big necromancer guy.
Yep. Wasn't that back when undead was like considered a faction of chaos?
Sort of.
Things were weird. Things were really weird back then.
Harry the Hammerer is the first official character, but
yeah,
we're
talking like named name.
Well, first official model.
Yeah.
In a way, I kind of would really love to get some copies of the first couple of editions of Warhammer just to see how it evolved, because wasn't it like not until third edition things really started to click?
Like the real character that a lot of the character we kind of characterize as Warhammer really came into being.
It's like it was third or fourth. So the introduction: the people of the old world do not care that there is no myth more enduring than the vampire. They do not care that versions of the vampire legend can be found amongst every race of their world. They do not care that vampires are potent symbols of the fear of death, disease, predators, their dark side, or of the night. They do not give a hoot about any of that old rubbish usually filling the introduction of scholarly works about vampires. To them, vampires are simply two things: deeply terrifying monsters of the darkest nightmare and everything they've ever wanted to be. Yes, vampires are hideous abominations that no sane person would want to join, but they're also powerful beyond imagination, effectively immortal, and resistance to the depredations of chaos, because of how necromancy works. They represent the freedom and fearlessness that defies a strict and terrifying world. They have everything old worlders want, but to get it, vampires have sacrificed the one thing old worlders value above all else: their souls.
Welcome to the Night's Dark Masters. The world of Warhammer is full of great many villainous forces. It is the world of grim and perilous adventure, after all. From the hordes of greenskins, the herds of the beastmen, the cultists and warriors of chaos, to the shambling mobs of the undead, there are plenty of villains for a player character to fight, face, and defeat. But most of these opponents are faceless. They have little character to them. Some flavorful elements tossed in to make encounters more memorable. Overall, you've slain your 15 mutant, they all kind of seem to come together a bit. But not all monsters.
You'll remember the mutant who explodes into a Gribbly.
Oh yeah, but yeah, especially at least in regards to the greenskins and the beastmen, those two especially tend to blend together. I will say from experience.
Yeah, they're kind of forgettable.
Yeah. However, not all monsters fit this mold. Some have a greater presence by their nature. Some pull the strings, embroidering themselves in convoluted plans and sinister machinations to achieve their ambitions. They are the shadowy figures behind countless intrigues. They are vampires. Possessed of great power, majesty enough to rival the Emperor, and ambition enough for a dozen living men, vampires are the movers and shakers of the undead. They have designs and plans to work their evil and carve a name for themselves in the annals of this dangerous world. They have incredible abilities, can dominate with a glance, break bones with ease, have mastery over the creatures of the night, and possess countless other talents that set them from the twitching, shrieking crowd of animated corpses. Of course, that doesn't mean they're invulnerable. They're cursed. They're vulnerable to ordinary things. They can be cut, they can bleed, they can die. Silver is their anathema, as is the purifying rays of the wholesome sun. To make matters worse, those arrayed against them know their ins and outs of fighting them, and so these undead masters must be vigilant in their defense, always watchful for the overreaching mortals with some misguided sense of justice who seek to destroy the undead.
By the way, that still doesn't mean that you're going to have a fancy time if you choose to fight a vampire. They will still wreck your fucking party.
Yeah, vampires in
Yeah.
Old World of Darkness are not Old World of Darkness. The Old World are fucking nasty beings.
Oh,
In Old World of Darkness, they're pretty scary too. It's just...
like I said, it's a sort of universal thing. A vampire is an army into themselves.
Yeah.
It's
However,
just,
also,
whereas one can be killed by getting shot in the head a couple times in the World of Darkness, here,
let's just put it this way: vampires are one of the only creatures within the roleplay that have the ability to use dodge blow on bullets.
Yeah.
Holy fuck!
Nothing else gets it.
Nothing else is so supernaturally quick as to literally avoid bullets like you would a hammer.
Well, correction. I think some daemons can.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. The only thing that compares them is the literal embodiment of nightmares.
Yeah. There also might be some heavily mutated humans that can pull it off that are like their champions, but that's about it.
Well, that's with a lot of fiat, but they are the only creatures by rule, if I remember correctly, that can gain that trait. But with these resources coupled with their own advantages, they truly deserve the title of the Knights Masters. The 9 chapters of this book go over all the details that go to it. This is just a summary of what they are. The prey. This goes over how they feed and what goes on with that. What exactly the life of a vampire, the mockery of life, what exactly the life of a vampire actually kind of is. The Chronicles of the Undying, some stories about the history of them and why they exist and how they're here, the nature of their existence, their characteristics, physical and mental, the Masters of the Night. This goes into the bloodlines. Once again, always a sort of prominent thing within vampire things within fantasies.
And in this case, yes, even in Warhammer, they do have bloodlines.
With some very familiar ones. Native Soil. It goes over the new real setting of this book, Sylvania, the cursed province.
Imagine having so many meteorites made of warpstone hitting your fucking lands that they glow radioactive sometimes.
And the dead get up because it's so shit.
It's so bad. Even the dead don't want to be buried there.
The crunch of how vampires work. The idea. One of the interesting ones, 8, a vampire campaign. If you were so fucking crazy to either if you wanted to run a game where all your players are vampires, or slightly more sane, where the vampires are antagonists or features within it, and finally, Creatures of the Night, an anthology regarding new monsters added.
Which, let's be fair, if you're familiar with Warhammer, you probably will know a lot of what we're going to talk about, but not everyone is. So let's get into it. And hey, Imp there, Imsit, the Midnight Aristocracy, yeah.
Aristocracy. Mm-hmm. Despite what Manfred says that no, he is not stronger than Nagash, and he will prove it in this book.
Yep. So there's a little story here. We can always skip.
Unfortunately, it is in very small text, so I'm not sure if even the viewers can even completely read it. But essentially, yeah, it's a story about a small battle, and let's just put it this way: it doesn't end well for the little party.
Oh, did they all get eaten alive? Probably.
I'll say one. I'll say one of the sentences from the last paragraph. Reinhardt never looked back.
I don't blame him. No, seriously, if you ever, I've looked at the stats of a vampire. I don't think it's in this book too, but
oh, they are.
I have a good idea. Yeah, you're not winning that fight, Chief.
Yep.
Not unless you've gone through several careers, and even then, some of you are dead.
The prey. I do not care what our prey thinks of us. Do you consider what opinion meat has of you? Konstantin von Karstein. Vampires are creatures of nightmare, unnatural, and dying monsters be feared and abhorred. Horror stories about them have been popular in the Empire ever since the Wars of the Vampire Counts. There are those who, paying too much heed to romantic poems of Duskek and Sirek. I gotta admit, I always love how the roleplay actually goes out of their way to make sounds like actual German and European sounding names, but God, I cannot pronounce them.
Yeah.
See them as beautiful mysteries, and those who, through madness or lust for power, see them as gods worthy of worship. But these exceptions are few to compare to those who only know fear knowing the stories of these predators.
Well, yeah, they don't care what you think. They're going to just eat you.
Like many myths purport to explain where vampires come from, but it's unlikely any of them contain any truth of the matter. Some of them are cautionary tales, some of them reflections. Others are myths of burial rites. Myths in Ostlund tell that a kind of vampire called the Doppelsungar, who breastfeed too long as infants and upon death return from the graves to suckle on humans till they drain them of their blood. These once again is taking some old European myths.
And then there's if you're a grave robber, there's a good chance that that's what causes you to rise up from the dead. Or if you just, straight up ended yourself.
And some of the more prominent stories begin as such. The White Lady. It's told in various forms from province to province. It even got adapted to a stage play. It's a common representation of the misunderstandings people have about the undead and their origins. They actually essentially conflate a vampire with what a banshee is, and two young lovers' suicide. It's a tragic story of love and loss, and the product of bastardry and other such. None of it's true, for the record. Leonard and Leonard. Legend of the sequence of legend told in the Empire that deals with a tragic love affair. Once again, you can kind of get the theme. It's all about the tragic nature of the vampire.
It's gonna be funny when we actually get into the real origins, but yeah.
Also, this is a little thing. This is actually all in-universe propaganda written by the vampires to make themselves seem more appealing. That's not even a joke.
Really?
Yeah, it's flat out essentially said later on that that one of the breeds of vampires, the Lamians, have essentially infiltrated society to try and first off either elude the fact that they exist, and when that didn't work, make them seem more appealing.
I get it, but I'd have at least one or two of these be organic,
Oh yeah, like some of them are definitely organic, but like essentially the Lamians have had their hands in essentially poisoning the well. It's good for them. If they don't know the actual story, it's a lot harder to nail down their weaknesses.
Fair.
The Night Queen. Also, notice all these things relate to women in some way. Thank you, European misogyny. Although the story does not state implicitly, some scholars is considered a veiled vampire. It's a Bretonian ballad about two honorable knights who travel to the World's Edge Mountains to visit the legendary Night Queen. After they travel for many weeks, the Night Queen lives, a woman of unearthly beauty who is cursed to never see the sun. Essentially, jealousy has her trap the knights and duel for her favor, resulting in their deaths. The common view. These are some of the best parts of the roleplay books. The quotes they give. Yes, they drink blood. Yes, some of them have been known to command armies of it, but at least they're not elves. Nils Valerian, popular agitator.
Also, may or may not be under the employ of the Lamians.
I've heard vampires travel around so easily because those filthy gypsies, the Strigani, shelter them in their caravans. I wouldn't put it past them. They're horse thieves and adulterers, and they reek of cabbage. It's a short walk here from harboring the undead, if you ask me.
And yes, I don't know how familiar other people are, even those familiar with fantasy, but there are gypsy equivalents. They're called the Strigani. And this guy, while sounding very, very, very European, here's the cursed part. He's not always wrong. Some Strigani actually are vampire cultists.
Yep. If only because it goes to the great, the cyclical relationship of we're outsiders, they hate us, so let's embrace the only thing that uses us, the vampires, which then leads us to being ostracized and hated.
There's a bit more to it.
I know, but like that happens sometimes. The dead walk fast. Sylvanian proverb.
They tell you that you need to be bit by one of the undead to become a vampire, but of course that's a lie. All you need to do to be a vampire is drink blood. The rest comes natural once you've drunk enough. It must be an awful lot, though. I've drank ever so much, and I'm still only a little pale. That might be... oh no, that's spoiling the milk, if you will. There's a type of undead that's not really undead.
But yeah, just shop girl talking about how she drinks the blood of dead people.
Yeah, just casually.
Vampires? I remember when the Count brought one to the ball, just waltzed in with her on his arm as if it was nothing special and spent the rest of the night showing her off. Caused a dreadful scandal, but what can you do? Chop's the Count after all. Terrible party that was. Six of her ladyship's corgi savage Sir Mosley Plumtree as he tried to coax some bee out with asparagus beds with his flute. I remember it well.
So, how...
What the fuck was that nonsense?
I think he might have had a schizophrenic break.
Either that or it was someone, they were all extremely lucky, or more likely, the Count was being an idiot and got fooled. But that's the thing, you don't know. We don't know if this is if the vampires have infiltrated the nobility that much to where that could happen, or if people are just insane.
Mama said that if I keep sucking my thumb, then bar-backed Peter will come and bite it off and suck at all my blood.
Really? Age 5. The common people are so misinformed about vampires, it would be comical if it weren't a matter of life or death. Only the basic ideas. They're immortal, they drink blood, have very specific weaknesses, are the only common knowledge. But beyond those specific details, what exactly they are open to debate. The common folk have no idea how many exist. They believe vampires are rare, only dwelling in foreign badlands, or depending on personal invocation, they're hiding around every corner.
It's usually somewhere in between.
They're everywhere. They've infiltrated every level of society. They work beside us and walk past us down the street in daylight. Plain as you please. You can't throw a rock in a crowded place without bad thing of a vampire too. And 3 demons. Mad Henrik. Hobo. That's what vagabond essentially means.
That sounds about right for your average hobo screaming at you.
Gerd always used to tell us that vampires would come for us one day. He was petrified of them, used to hang holy symbols around his room and slept with a clove of garlic in his mouth to keep him away from the neck. Well, one morning we found him pale in his sheets and as dead as can be. Turned out he choked on the garlic to death.
Yeah, he's a dummy. What he should have done is put it around the neck. They'd have to touch it.
They are stronger than us, they are smarter than us, live longer than us, and are far busy looking than us. They are superiors in every way, and taxes are lower when they rule. When they come back, I will be the first to welcome them. Harskull, a Sylvanian.
So, yeah, that's a thing about the Sylvanians. Every time humans actually rule them, they're traditionally some of the shittiest fucking lords that you could possibly put in charge of anything. Look, don't get me wrong. Sylvania is a backwards, poor, filled with warpstone and dead that crawl out of the ground to get the fuck away from it nightmare land. So you don't want to put your best, but it takes effort to pick people so fucking bad that they welcome eagerly the horde of undead.
Well, the controlled horde of the undead.
Yeah.
He already had the horde of undead.
Like, that should tell you how fucking terrible the human administrators usually are.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, but usually.
The scholars, I'll go a little over this because these are a
the
little less
more
funny.
educated.
These actually have information in them. Some.
Because,
Some of it,
again,
a lot of it's also bullshit. A lot of it's also bullshit.
well, yeah, because the way that these work, if you've never cracked open one of the side books for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the commoners ones are what do normal bumbos think. Scholars are what the educated of the old world would think. It's not what they actually are, but it's the best guesses from the minds that actually would have at least some good info.
Mm-hmm. The second one actually even comes from a supposed vampire hunter. But if you read through his stuff, it's stuff like, oh, you need to drink the blood of a chaos worshiper, or commit horrible indecencies and mutations. So that's completely wrong.
Also, he may or may not be a cultist trying to feed bullshit about how he's totally not a cultist.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons knowledge of vampires and their habits is so hard to come by is that it's being suppressed by the religious authorities. They are the only known complete copy of Frederick von Hell, also known as Von Hell, Liber Mortis, is kept in the Great Temple of Sigmar in Altdorf, and a scholar would need very special disposition and favor from the Grand Theogonist to read it.
So I keep forgetting. Is that the guy who regularly tries to kill all the undead, or is it the
No,
guy
Von
who?
Hell's a bit interesting. Long story. He's get talked about everything, but essentially, Von Hell, big ass necromancer.
Well, there's
Yeah,
two Van Hells. The original,
yeah.
which
There's
was
two
a
Van Hells, but yeah,
necromancer.
the first Van Hell is the necromancer. The second Van Hell is his descendant, who is a witch hunter. Who witch hunts to avenge the dishonor of having essentially your most famous ancestor, lead a giant undead horde of genocide, which was awesome. Yeah. The Books of Blood, the forbidden grimoires of Cain, describe vampires as godlike who stride amongst the centuries, letting blood flow like rivers. However, the Books of Blood are impossible for an honest scholar to obtain copies of, and the fragments that do exist are often copied from remnants that are usually found within the victims of Cainite cultists. So it's common that some of these are probably even remotely close to accurate.
I do find it interesting, though, that the murder god of the elves cultists are the ones that actually give you that, like, they have their own books. Also, I kind of love the mental image of it either being murderous elves or just like even murderous humans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perilous Beasts, which actually, if I remember, I think it's supposed to be a reference to actually the grimoire, to the essentially the role plays essentially creature compendium. Even supposedly has some quotes from vampires themselves. Unsurprisingly, it was quickly banned. Also, that book also had such wonderful quotes for such the Skaven, the ogres, literal chaos warriors.
Amazing. I can see why it was banned if he's talking about Ratman.
Didn't it have quotes? It had quotes from the Ratman. One of the regular quoting scholars in that book was he's labeled Eshin professional.
Everyone knows rat people don't exist.
Who gave his professional opinion on how to murder everything in that book.
Everyone knows rat people ain't real.
Yes, the Skaven. We have dismissed this claim.
Yes. What are you talking about? Less scholarly arguments of the vampires that have gripped the popular imagination, but their sources are contradiction and misinformation.
Oh, hey, look.
Jaeger,
a nod to one of the most popular series of books in fantasy.
Felix Jaeger from My Travels with Gotrek tells of his encounters with the vampires in Sylvania, but many of these details of the story are hard to believe and impossible to verify. Jaeger is a known. Also, see, that's another thing that this book is written from a person's perspective, not a narrator's perspective. Is a known agitator, outlaw, and adventurer whose word counts for little. To confuse the matter, the story was then adapted by Wilhelm Koenig for the verse drama Vampire Slayer, which contradicts Jaeger's account on several points and is set a good 20 years later. That's the reference to how Warhammer Fantasy lore got messed up by all the weirdness by the edition lores.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like you have to try to clutch things together to make it work. Hey, Forsaken Wanderer, Gotrek and Felix better than Game of Thrones will take that belief to the grave. Well, you know what Gotrek and Felix can say? It fucking ended.
Well,
Mostly.
it didn't end by stabbing itself in the throat.
Yeah.
Kiss of Light poem, Vlad's Imperial Dem have both dedicated sequences of poems to their vampire loves. The Vampire Tsarina. Yes, that actually happened once. Kiss was once ruled by a goddamn vampire.
That sounds
And the
about right,
dubious,
though.
the blood Tsarina. And Dorchev's case of betting the hero of the Empire, Genevieve Donin, are neither ideal or unbiased sources. The same can be said of The Tragedy of Oswald and a Life by Javine. Enough, Javine actually is a protagonist. Yeah, Javine's actually a protagonist in a few Warhammer novels. And then, of course, we have the completely unbiased opinion of a priest of Moor and a witch hunter.
Oh boy. There are many types of vampires, but we do know certain things that apply to all of them. They can only go out at night. They are repelled by holy symbols, garlic and onion soaked in urine. They must sleep on their native soil. They cannot cross running water. They cannot enter an abode uninvited. If poppy or millet seeds are dropped at their feet, they must pause and count them. They cannot pass a knotted rope without untying it. All of these things point to vampires as beings of weakness, not strength. In our empire split by the Reich and its tributaries, how could a vampire travel without crossing running water? What threat are they to us if we live modest lives, remaining in our homes at night and decorating them with symbols of the gods? Do we not have anything to fear from creatures who can be incapacitated by common household ingredients? The vampires are a threat whose time has passed. We didn't live in fear of them any longer. Oh, how fucking wrong you are, buddy, but okay.
Yeah, it's the thing is he's not completely wrong, but he's so far from right. It's funny.
I know.
From beyond our lands, the influence. Essentially, once again, vampires are one of the are a race that have spread themselves across the world. So each kind of place has their own
The
idea of them.
entire world is shat up at least a bit by some, even the New World.
Yep.
Yeah, Thalia and
Vampire
Talea.
and all that.
They have their own. It wasn't as bad. They have their own scars from the Vampire Wars and are very unforgiving in regards to the undead. The Tulane city states appear to be free of large-scale vampire activity, though some Strigoi nests can be found in the country. We'll get into those. But perhaps this is because of the warding influence of the Cult of Moor, who are strong on Talea and hold great conviction. Perhaps more sinisterly, the Byzantine politics of Talea make it easy for the vampires to remain hidden. Maragliano in particular is rumored to be a haven.
If you're wondering,
And then there's
Lucini has the Raven Temple, I think it's called, if I remember it's called right, which is the largest temple complex to Moor in the entire Old World. Being the size of a good-sized cathedral, not many shrines of Moor really exist other than near the site of their gardens, which are the graveyards. As for Miragliano, the reason why it might be popular to vampires is because it's near the big ass marsh, the blighted marshes. I forget what they're called. The big fuck off gross marsh where Skaven Blade is.
Full of RUSs. Bretonia,
but, I will say that it's not uncommon, especially in Astalia, to find nobles that are likely vampires. Tylea too. It's not hard.
Yeah. Speaking of nobles who dip in the red wine, Bretonia, superstitious peasants of Bretonia only fear the mention of vampires. They've adapted some of the practices of Sylvania, burying their dead face down so as they don't rise again, placing carrot cloves in the ears of the dead and dried crow's feet in their mouths. Because Bretonia was the home of the infamous blood dragon known as the Red Duke, the Scourge of Aquitaine, and rumors persist that others of his dead dread kind dwell in isolated hamlets. These vampire knights are known to be some of the only worthy opponents for questing knights who see them as chivalrous, tortured souls. The glamour of the knightly ideal blinds them to the truth of the matter. The Red Duke was a fucking barbarous killer as are most of his kind. the courtly ideas of the Bretonnian nobles make them easy prey for the Lamians, who have secretly infiltrated Bretonnian society as easily as they did the Empire.
Actually, the cursed part is the Red Duke wasn't the only example of a vampire getting that much power.
He just murdered the most people.
Yeah. I know, for example, the former dukedom of Musion has quite a few vampires that rule as noblemen.
They're one of the things that are briefly mentioned as one of the settings, but they don't get as much detail as Sylvania. Kislev. Most vampires who dwell in Kislev are of the monstrous kind, beasts barely better than the animals they hunt. It is believed they regularly consume garlic vodka. Consuming garlic vodka will keep them at bay. The Kislevites' lack of familiarity with vampires in their more seductive guise is what allowed Tsarina Katerin to keep her rulership of the country even after she became a vampire.
That's
different Tsarina Katerin, for the record. Different Tsarina Katerin.
Yeah, there's another one. This one became a vampire.
The Kislevites have a long tradition of magic-wielding ice witches holding positions of power, so a pale, beautiful woman with magical abilities holding the throne wasn't without precedent.
It's her reign was type of magic she had, though.
Yeah, well, it was still ice magic, just it had some other stuff. Her reign was cut short when the country boyars realized that having an immortal ruling them meant no one would ever rise to the top again, and they would have been reduced their squabblings amongst themselves for greater share of power. This led to an alliance where Tsarevich Pavel finally dealt with him. Her frozen corpse is still on display as the Frost Paladins as a warning to vampires.
No, it's not even because she's an undead abomination. That wasn't what got them to finally get rid of her.
It was the fact that, oh my god, our politics will be ruined if we actually have an immortal god queen ruling us.
Oh no, we won't be able to try to levy power over the next poor idiot that we put in the Tsar. Oh, and Forsaken Wanderer. Some of them even ride giant undead crabs in Lustria. I think we're getting to that someday.
I think he is briefly mentioned. I won't save it for it. And finally, Araby. Knowledge of necromancy is one of the few lands where it's not suppressed, but they also don't suffer the ignorance that allowed vampires to gain a hold there. Only the blood dragons have any presence there, and that's only in the western deserts of the Badlands. The people of Norska and Albion don't really have much experience with vampires either. Perhaps because their aversion to running water keeps vampires from traveling the sea.
Well, Albion has other protections.
And Norska is so fucking infused with chaos that why in the hell would a vampire live there?
Although, hey, actually, they mentioned that could be hilarious.
It cannot be long, however, as even Lustria has learned to fear the vampire Luther Harkon and his undead pirates who control the region known as the Vampire Coast.
Yeah? Undead pirates, baby.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read through all of them, but some of these are pretty fucking funny. They must have short memories, those poets who wrote of the noble vampires. Do they remember how many died? The dead are neither noble nor beautiful. I have been to Musion, I can tell you that for a fact.
Yeah.
Tony Rapscallion.
Fun fact: Musion actually has its national flower. It's a dukedom flower, the rose of Musion, only grows on the site where blood has been spilled. Particularly, not just blood, the extinguishment of a soul.
What?
I'm not even kidding. It only grows in battlefields where people frickin' died.
I've got nothing to fear from the queen vampire bitch and her daughters. My blood's half Bugman's, and there's few manlings alive or undead who could stand a drop opponents that. I'll march and take the place tonight, piece of pish. Put some sausages on. I'll be back for breakfast. Dwarf Troll Slayer, deceased.
Good. Good, that's what he wanted. That's exactly what he wanted.
I know, but it's still fucking hilarious.
Yeah, because you know how he got deceased. Almost certainly. Yeah.
Blood is for the blood god, not for drinking. Of corn.
I'm just envisioning a small pack of vampire counts managed to sneak their way and drink all the blood from the sacrifice before the Cornates could finish it, and they're just so angry.
Elves see vampire as further evidence of the inherent weakness of a human. An elf would rarely ever turn to dark magic to lengthen their lives. They live for pretty much ever anyway. The idea is alien and unnatural to them, and the Ghost Striders count vampires amongst the monstrous threats they need to mercilessly squash. Even the Druki dislike the vampires, seeing them evidence of magical techniques tortured from their ancestors by Nagash.
That doesn't mean there aren't undead elves.
It doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they are so fucking rare. It's like seeing someone with a pink pinky. What? Dwarfs. Vampires find the blood of dwarfs stale and tasteless and tend to leave them alone. However, the dwarves have a lengthy entry in the Book of Gods for Netheralder, who they call the Queen of Evil, for taking the mountain fastness of Silver Pinnacle from them in a single night. Many troll slayers still find their heroic deaths there. Dwarves have also come to the aid of human allies against the vampire counts on occasion, and at the Battle of Helfen, they fought valiantly against the forces of Manfred.
Yeah, dwarves.
They don't mention it, but they also hate them because ancestor worship and necromancy do not go well together.
Yeah, dwarves hate the most necromancy because it's defiling your ancestors doing it.
Haven. The Ratmen that don't exist. Sylvania has one of the world's greatest concentrations of warpstone, which naturally makes it attractive to Skaven. All of their attempts have been foiled, though, and even the stealth teams of Eshin occasionally sent in to harvest warpstone are afraid to enter the forests. The Skaven Masterworks, the Great Plague of 1111, was foiled not only by Manfred Skaven Slayer, but an army of plague victims who rose from the dead. Funnily enough, that's actually Helfen. He was one of the plague victims who essentially went mad and started hearing Nagash whisper to him. And he rose up essentially all the victims of the plague to help fight against the Skaven, but he went mad, through corruption and started just killing everyone.
Yeah, if you're wondering the Great Plague they're talking about, I think it's either the red or the green one.
I think it's
the red plague.
Yeah, it was the bad one. It was a bad.
And
finally,
basically,
Chaos.
The Skaven are responsible for this setting's equivalent of the bubonic plague.
Several times.
Yeah, Chaos. They've done it 3 times, I think.
Yeah, the worshippers of the Chaos have a strange position with vampires. The followers of blood gods see them as blasphemers who steal blood that rightfully belongs to Khorne. Their immunity to disease obviously makes them distasteful to Nurgle. Tzeentch's followers see them as beings of stasis, as they unchanged by the years or of mutation abhorrent in the god's eyes. However many of them he happens to have at the moment. Although some vampires live lives of pleasure enough to make Slaanesh swoon, they have resistance to all things new and prefer to live in their idealized past rather than embracing new sensations, arousing cultists' contempt.
That's actually not the full reason. It's that at the end of the day, necromancy, it kind of takes what they see as rightfully theirs, because necromancy is a horrifying refinement of Dar, which is dark magic.
Yeah. It's also, as it says, and vampires gain no benefit from watching their herd vanish under the sea of chaos, and the unholy symbols of the dark gods pain them as much as any holy symbol. They have sided with humanity, often secretly, in the war against chaos. Strange it might seem from the point of humans, who only see monsters on both sides, but the forces of chaos and vampires are naturally opposed.
Mm-hmm.
And those who hunt the vampires, they make a long story short with them. As it puts it, most of them fail, their bloodless bodies left to rot or animated to serve their enemies.
Yeah, usually it's a rare duck that actually manages to pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times it's usually because A, they don't know enough, or B, they think they can 1v1 a frickin' vampire.
You can't. You might be able to 1v1 like a fledgling, like a real fledgling vampire, but
I mean, that's a bit of a stretch.
That's like, you got to get lucky.
You got to cut your teeth by murdering other undead.
Although often loners, vampire hunters often gather together out of necessity to share what they know, and huddling in quiet spaces. The League of Ostermark is their known unofficial home of vampire hunters due to its proximity with Sylvania. They are distrustful of outsiders, as witch hunters have been known to harass them for knowing more than is good for them. But they'll aid them when time comes. Some examples, and then an example of one of the secret societies that sometimes fight them, the Fellowship of the Shroud, a Morite secret service, for lack of a better word. They are death cultists. They worship more, and they're an information network that tries to fight the vampire information
Well,
network.
they're not fully a death cultist. They don't want to kill everyone.
Yeah.
They're a mortuary cult. Is a
Yeah,
better term for it.
that's why I stopped myself there. Like I couldn't know where the
Yep,
exact
they're a
term.
mortuary cult.
Mm-hmm. And that
Well, a
Vazar
mortuary
Vich
cult is a little bit different, technically speaking, but it's
Technically.
close enough.
one of the close. I don't know. Yeah, like said,
They're a cult
Sarvitsian
of the
Pavel
dead, yeah.
Society. Named after the schizophrenic noble who struck the final blow against the vampire Tsarina, ending her rule. Following, they seek to remove vampirism from noble families. Their motives are not only as true as they only care about vampires who threaten the purity of noble blood and their own chances of inheriting, which would drop if their parents became immortal.
That's literally why the Blood Arena was overthrown, by the way. It wasn't. It was entirely due to this. That's why Tsarevich Pavel fucking killed her. He didn't want to be King Edward after Victoria, where it was commonly thought that I think it was called Prince Albert. It was commonly thought that Prince Albert would just drop dead before she did.
Yeah.
He didn't want that.
I remember the quote. I remember the quote attributed to him. Oh, how every day I'm grateful for my eternal father, but why must you have given me an eternal mother? But yeah, they're a joke. They don't realize that most of their society has been infiltrated by the Lamians, and there's so much of a joke that the von Karsteins don't even know they exist.
Oh yeah, and on top of that, they're often aimed just at people.
Yeah, the wrong people, because like I said, they became puppets eventually of the vampires. The Irondirty, a hereditary order of secret vampire hunters who consider themselves chosen by more. Membership is only through the sons and daughters, once per generation.
Oh, and if you're wondering what the Andante are from, they're almost certainly from Tylea or Astalia. Most likely Tylea, just from the name.
Yeah.
Probably from Lucini, actually.
Welcome to Astalia, gentlemen.
Oh, Astalia. Okay, I was close.
Should we play that clip? The Welcome to Astalia, gentlemen. The one with Balthazar's
The chances are not high. I mean, it was appropriate because they are riding the undead in that one.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, snag me a clip. I wouldn't be able to instantly get it.
Just names one of the things, but yeah, these dudes are but they're less of a joke than the Russians.
Well, yeah, because they're actually a little more familiar with it. Because let's be fair, if you're going to deal with petty politics, either from city-states or from the many kingdoms of Astalia, it's a lot easier to insert your agents or just, disguise yourself as a nobleman. So there's actually more vampires there to play around with.
Mm-hmm. Also, these wonderful quotes. What do they want reading all them books about vampires and other things Maine ain't supposed to know? Sounds mighty sus if you ask me, peasant.
Where the hell's this? Oh, up here.
It's above the identity. Death to the dead! Common vampire hunter battle cry.
Before they die, right before they get violently exploded into bones.
Oh no! Yep. That's before someone cast. That's someone before Cat gazed in the gash and burned their face off.
I got you the clip.
All right. Give me about
Welcome
half a second.
Welcome to Astalia, gentlemen.
Let me make sure that Yep, okay. And let me do this correctly because I don't want to...
The picture just makes it, honestly.
There we go.
Welcome to Astalia, gentlemen. I will not lie. The chances of your survival are small. Some may even turn against your friends as living corpses. But you have my word that I will use my arcane gifts to ensure your bodies are...
I'll have to pause it because you know how YouTube do.
Yeah.
That's good.
Just imagining Apocalypse Now, but it's Balthazar Gelt.
Yeah. There we go.
Now that would be a fun campaign.
Vietnam and Astalia against the undead.
Well, no, you're fighting the wood elves because they're in the fucking trees. Welcome to Astalia, gentlemen.
That's not gonna go well for you. It's never gonna go well for anyone.
I know, that's the joke.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare of a campaign.
The mocker.
You
They're
can
in the
always tell
trees, man. The Charlie's in the trees.
Oh no, it's when the trees wake up and strangle you.
Yeah, Charlie is the trees now, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You better have that flamethrower ready.
What flamethrower? You're a fucking Levy.
A mockery of life. You can always tell vampires by their eyes. They hold disdain and dreadful need in equal measure, but carry a mirror as well.
Yeah?
What you don't know can hurt you, especially if you hunt vampires. Ignorance is just as dangerous as the undead themselves. When anyone displays a depth of knowledge about necromancy comes under instant suspicion, research is not an easy task. Those who do not have access to the forbidden works or restricted sections of temple libraries may have to make do with incomplete secondhand sources, such as the dubious Vermin Alley Diary. And in this case, it's a supposed diary about someone who deals with a vampire. It is.
When I heard Vermin Alley, I'm wondering, is this a book about the Skaven as well, and that's why it's of dubious quality?
Might reference it once or twice, I'm thinking.
Because that would actually be really interesting. Is it's an 100% true account of everything about vampires that this person knows, and it's all correct. It's just that it also has the Skaven, so nobody believes it.
Well, it's like he occasionally makes reference to I don't know, rat people.
The fucking rats that talk down there and they're dealing with the vampires to take us all over.
Well, actually, that'd be funny. Is he actually had to ask one of the rat people for information on how to kill it? Similar to Perilous Beasts, where the dude somehow managed to not necessarily befriend, but work with an Eshin assassin professional to get insight on how best to murder every animal.
Well, I mean, in that case, he probably just gave them a bunch of crushed dwarfstone. You know, he basically gave the rat men cocaine to bribe them. That's my guess.
I remember one of his. For some creatures, he didn't have an answer towards, like dragons or other things, and in some cases, like demons, he just kind of said, "No, not worth it." Amongst the complete is a written account from one of the Raven Knights, who are vampire hunters.
Yep, and here's they give you a pretty good segment of the entire thing, actually. Also, I really like this art here.
Yeah, vampires and their kind. But of course, obviously, these works are always a bit etchy because it's always come from someone who's never 100% sure, and they've always obviously got their very, very implicit knowledge.
Yeah, they don't have the meta knowledge that you guys and we do. Well, not necessarily everyone. You know, not everyone plays every game.
Mm-hmm. And there's some art from one of the actual Warhammer Fantasy battle books on page 21. Page 21.
And yes, the undead, the vampires, can be put down permanently.
Oh yeah.
The origins of vampires are shrouded, but we know they come from the land of the dead. They actually, that is correct. They come from Toomkang lands.
So why they think that is
wrong.
A bit more. Yeah. You can be right and wrong at the same time.
It was from the ancient land of the dead that the great necromancer Nagash came. That's correct. And in those days, the vampires walked with him. Also correct to a degree. Whether they were his creations or self-made monsters is unknown. More the latter. Vampires do not often associate with necromancers who call themselves Nagash's disciples today. Well, yeah, because they don't want to be fucking puppeted by him. When that land was robbed of life, the vampires spread their foul contagion to the rest of the world, as the vampire must feed on the blood of the living. They could not dwell in a nation of bones. The separate breeds scattered. Yep, blah, 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 blah. That's actually really close.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's pretty accurate with just enough wrong that you can kind of tell that these, that obviously these guys are experienced, but they just, like I said, they just don't have meta knowledge.
Yeah, the Raven Knights here are the closest to being accurate.
Well, it makes sense. They were in order. They're stationed pretty much right on the boundary of Sylvania, and they regularly make forays there.
There have been dark whispers of vampire dwarves and members of other races, but no hard evidence of their existence has yet been found. Although that could be interesting. That could be a very interesting concept of like a specific different clan that are from that sort of odd stock, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Some among the elves would have it be that only we become vampires, proof of the inherently chaotic and debased nature of mutable men. However, there are those that say the Dark Ones are a degenerate form of elf and an entire nation of chaos-worshipping dwarves in the lands to the east. Even the halflings begat the goblins. Perhaps each race has its evil mirror. I love one's right, second's right, and then halflings may have created goblins.
Halflings may have created goblins.
Like goblins
Yeah, I mean,
are
they're both
degenerated
small,
halflings.
right? They're both
I mean,
small, right?
As far as like schizo theories
It's not bad.
in this sort of setting, it's not a bad one.
The actual more correct answer though is that ogres are their kin. No, seriously, it's very heavily hinted that they're kin.
The ogres, yeah.
They get along well. It's just it's like the equivalent of the Chihuahua and then the Great Dane. They both like to eat. They probably will eat one will eat the flesh of human. The other one probably would happily do it. And they both take bits. They both take shiny bits that they think are cool.
God, halfling serial killers must be absolutely terrifying. I'm just imagining like halfling Jeffrey Dahmer.
Don't ask how they keep the fields so green.
Children of the Corn. Harvest's gonna be a good harvest this year.
You're joking, but there's several, I think, little sub books that kind of imply that the halfling pantheon, to some degree, are that. Yeah,
they're the Great Moth. Yeah.
Like not entirely, but there's elements of it which you know, there may be like some dark agrarian, similar to like He Who Walks Behind the Row.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the whole pantheon, but like some cults. Yeah, and they both have the stomach of giants. Yeah. And they're also both very resilient against chaos. That's the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is weird, but there you go.
Yep. Dark Kiss, more or less, it just goes over how a vampire is turned, or at least how they kind of see it. Essentially, yeah, they describe it as a disease, which is not the actually that wrong way of describing it. It's more of a affliction, which is a minor difference, I suppose. But yeah, and when you awaken as a lord of the undeath, you are changed. You are stronger. You are a lord of undeath. You are no longer living. Bring on the predators. It's about the methodology of a lot of vampire hunters. Goes into essentially how a lot of them go into how not just the knights but other undead hunters operate. Usually, obviously, they hang around Sylvania because that's where they hang out often. But vampires can be anywhere, and often it's the ones that are anywhere that are actually sometimes more dangerous because they're hidden in plain sight. Or
on top of that, they make a big point just from the first sentence alone. Vampire hunters must know speed when searching out the undead, because by the time reports of vampire activities reach the ears of the Templars of Sigmar, who are usually sent to deal with that sort of shit, it's usually way too late. They've either gone underground or there's a lot of bodies.
Witch hunters lack subtlety. Subtle means of investigation. They typically round up locals to put into question until they find the monster or frighten it off with their clumsy approaches. Obviously not everyone, but once again, these people are more right. They don't have the highest opinion. In hunting the beasts our way, we not only spare victims becoming food. You see, it's kind of the thing. The Knights of the Raven are essentially they go to the ground and often go around in solo squads, scouting around and trying to find out dead. And they're often good enough to where they can a Knight of the Raven might be able to take a fledgling vampire, but often, obviously, then they prefer to do it as a group.
On top of that, they even make a point. You have to be kind of aggressive about it.
Mm-hmm. Take them down when they don't let them fight on their terms. Mm-hmm. Don't get into melee range if you can help it.
Oh no! Take just shoot them a lot.
Mm-hmm. Or use a horse.
Run them over. Oh, here's some good classic. I think this is like an older edition where.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That. Yeah.
I love
mortals who have interacted with vampires often possess a glassy stare and often infect from the hypnotic offense of an undead to get their way. It depends on the vampire, but yeah, that's a distinct possibility.
Sorry, I'm a
those
little lost because I'm not smart.
Going on, because a lot of this stuff is kind of stuff that's going to be brought up a lot, so I'm just not going over all of it. I'm going
That's
over
fair.
kind of more interesting parts. Discover victims and their vassals, and you can tell a vassal by the marks that they've left, as well as their glassy eyes. Recent arrivals in the area should be surreptitiously spied out. Day attention to the traveling folk, the vagabonds, and the outcasts who may be minions of our prey. Identifying the undead. This actually goes into some of the bloodlines, and it's interesting kind of going it from the outsider's perspective again.
Because there are different bloodlines of vampires.
The 5 distinct ones are the von Karsteins, who are the most famous. They are the Counts. They represent each of the in a meta way. Each of the bloodlines represents one of the ideals of old-fashioned vampirism. These are the Draculas, the old-fashioned aristocrats.
Come and burn my castle. I shall take care of you.
Although the term von Karsteins actually, it's not that type of vampire existed before them. It's
named after their most famous.
Not only that, but they very quickly were able to essentially take that bloodline and kind of rule it.
Yeah. They are what they desire most more is power in the sense of like borders and land. They want to rule. They desire the power to rule.
And they do have a couple of tails. For example, they do have very quickly, you can tell their fingernails are actually razor sharp. And if you take a good look at their eyes, they tend to be bloody, as in blood red.
They're able to give a half decent appearance of looking human if they try.
Yeah, it's not hard for them.
It may be impractical to drive every Sylvanian you meet to anger to determine if they are mortal, but a hunter should not shy away from it if no other means presents themselves.
Yeah.
Another are the Strigoi. These are vampires as brutal beasts.
So the Strigoi are an interesting lot because actually you might find this interesting, Doc, if you don't know it. The Strigoi in a lot of ways are the closest to the Brujah, actually.
They look like Nosferatu. They were an enlightened scholar race, yeah.
Yeah. They even ruled an empire of the not necessarily the dead. They even ruled an empire called the Strigoi Empire.
It was legitimately one of the closest things Warhammer's had to a utopia, which is fucking horrifying.
Yeah, the undead actually managed to. They didn't rule directly. They had a mortal emperor. I think it was from their capital.
At first, but they took him down eventually.
So as for what happened to it, after a couple of years, a bunch of boys got together, saw this was good fighting, and kicked their ass.
Well, that's the story if you don't know the actual story. But yeah, and essentially that ruined their story. We'll get into that. But essentially that ruined the Strigoi and reduced them to this: a monstrous feral beast that lives on the corner with delusions of grandeur.
Kind of, yeah. Basically, what happened was they, for some reason, thought that their kin would, at the very least, out of self-interest, care. That went wrong, horribly wrong for them.
They think the thing that makes them stand out, besides their feralness, is their biggest. They are flat out the strongest, physically strongest and toughest of all of the vampires. They are the hardest to physically put down.
To give you an idea, a particularly elderly Strigoi is easily the most physically imposing of them all.
They don't wear armor. Their skin, their dead skin thickens into armor.
Yeah.
Other vampires.
There is actually a Strigoi border prince.
Few, actually.
There's several. There's the one that literally lives in a cave and just murders everything that comes into his lands that try to fuck with his peasants. Then there's the one who uses nothing but intermediates and packs of wolves to guard his homeland.
Then there's, at least what I feel, is one of the scariest, the Necrarchs, because they are actually, funnily enough, the least inhuman of all the vampires, which is saying something compared to the Strigoi. Also, by the way, if you couldn't tell, Strigoi, that's where the Strigani come from. The
Strigani are the surviving heirs of the, I think it's called the Stygian Empire?
Strigos.
Strigos, yeah.
Yeah. The Necrarchs kind of willingly, in a way, give up their humanity, and it shows. They are one of the most deeply terrifying, and unlike the Strigoi, which, funnily enough, I actually rate the Strigoi as the least deadly of all the vampires. The Necrarchs are fucking masters of magic.
Essentially, imagine they're almost like D&D liches.
Yeah, they're pretty close to it.
They even look like liches, only they tend to have very thinly held together, essentially blackened skin over their palms.
They also some of them unironically worship Nagash because they hate life so much.
Yep, and on top of that, they often kind of look like a rat-human hybrid, which might be what how the Skaven used to hide themselves. They might just put Necrarch plot.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the knights here don't have the most information on them because Necrarchs don't actually bother with affairs of humans often.
Because
in Bretonnia,
why dabble with the disgusting living?
Mm-hmm. In Bretonnia, there is a breed of vampire that shares the aristocratic breed. Yeah, sure, buddy. The blood keeps in the Empire. Okay. They are warriors dedicated to perfecting their craft with the power vampirism affords. Single-minded, they are the blood dragons, as they call themselves, and are the most noble-blooded men of the Empire until they reveal their true faces in anger. Unfortunately, they are brazen enough to flaunt their icons of their order. True.
Yes and no.
The blood dragons. The blood dragons aren't one to hide.
But yeah.
Well, the problem with the blood dragon is they combine the combat capability. They're the most physically dangerous in a melee fight. Strigoi are stronger physically, but a blood dragon has skill to back up his strength.
The skill of the battlefield. And on top of that, the best way to describe blood dragons, they're essentially the undead equivalent of the Coronate cult. The combat's all they care about.
The dragon in that name isn't just a big fancy animal. It's the prey they hunt.
Yeah, they actually will pick fights with them.
Finally, the last of the common breeds is far more secretive than the rest. Generally all female with intrinsic beauty, they were taken to the ranks of the undead in their prime youth. These, I actually note they don't even have the name for them, which also goes in the show that
the Lamians are good at what they do.
The Lamians do their best. They know they exist, but they don't know anything about them. Like you said, that's what they do. It's good, but some of the things are things they don't even have a name.
And the only real tell, because they look actually, besides the Von Karsines, and even then they're more human looking than them, you can really only tell through mirrors. And holy symbols. They'll recoil if you touch them with it or they're really close with it, but other than that, you're not going to easily tell.
And in this one, it really just goes over what you'd fucking expect. The vampires are strong.
Even the crappiest vampire.
They're physically tough. They're tougher. They can claw even the most human looking ones can fucking claw your face off with their fingers. Enhanced senses. In natural magical power. Some of them can even transform into animals. Yep. And they can compel people to do their bidding. Oh, it needs to go on. Translated from Petra was angered by this, and he looked down upon the vile city from his chariot. He did curse them into the last generation, that and they would be forever damned, cursed, unclear. In those hours, whilst the sky was his. Translated from a text found in the land of the dead.
It's a shame that all of their gods are dead.
Literally.
Yeah.
It just goes into necromancy. It just goes over what you'd expect. But it goes into all the vampires are cursed in some way, though they don't know why. They assume something, symbolically holy reason. But vampire they differ by their strengths and weaknesses, but generally there's the most basic ones. Certain plants reveal. While it's true that certain plants reveal vampires, pillet and poppy seeds are worthless, and garlic is so rarely effective it's not even worth it. It can repel vampires, but it can. Note the word can. Other herbs have much greater effects.
Yeah, like grave root. Grave root's actually pretty effective.
Religious artifacts do often have a good effect. Not only
well, there's other herbs, Damon's root, witchbane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm just being things. Simply making the hand of the symbol of the hammer, which, by the way, it just is this was revealed on one of the other things. The symbol of the hammer, for the record, is literally the OK symbol over your eye. It's supposed to represent the comet of Sigmar.
The twin-tailed comet, yes.
Yeah, but it looks stupid when you put it over your eye.
Also, it doesn't fucking work.
Yeah. Sunlight is obviously a good killer.
Holy ground will actually make them not inclined to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I think they still can. It's just they feel reluctance and tend to avoid it.
It's uncomfortable.
Celestial magic's also pretty. Celestial and certain magic's also very effective. And of course, the power of God. He's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, Sigmarite Priest does a pretty good job when they don't fuck up an investigation.
Also, they note the fucking thing. Hunters consider the restrictions against vampires being immersed in running water to be nothing more than superstition. But in this instance, they're wrong. Crossing water by boat or bridge doesn't bother them. Undead might be destroyed completely if they're running water. Again, not wrong, but not completely wrong. Actually, there's going to experience. In some vampires actually do have that weakness. Like that full-on weakness.
Because so when I'm thinking about running water, does this mean that rain would count? Because technically, rain is running water. It's just falling.
Well, it's more that vampires are completely unaffected. Their undead thralls, because of their weaker statute, can be dragged away and sucked away, or essentially rapidly rot because of waterlogging. Because waterlogging does accelerate.
This is getting a little bit into the fluff, but some vampires do carry the curse of being unable to cross running water. Essentially, they can't swim. They can cross over bridges, but they can't cross over but they can't swim, for instance.
Okay.
Because they just
some actually do. So some vampires, if they're tossed in water, they're fine. But others will fucking burn and explode because their curse activated on that.
Oh. Is it specifically to one of the bloodlines, or is it just a rare thing?
It's RNG to a big extent, but certain bloodlines are more affected than others.
Interesting.
That's all I'm getting. Silver hurts. Yeah, ordinary weapons can hurt vampires if they're wielded with force, but these wounds are trifling. But a blessed weapon or a silver weapon are far more effective. Once again, it goes to regenerate. Yeah, vampires typically have a form of regeneration. But regeneration doesn't heal everything.
It's like fucking up a troll.
Yeah. Also, fire. Fire kills everything. The application of venom from an Arabian tomb scorpion to the sliver of a bone harvested from an undead, just hung on the length of string, creates a pendulum that will swing in the direction of nearby vampires. Interesting. There's just some interesting little vampire stuff, vampire hunting stuff here.
Neat.
Yeah, just mostly just little applications from one hunter to another. And finally, decapitation and cremation. Kills them.
Oh, here's another interesting one. Grave root. If you've been injured, like if you have an open wound, mix it with grave root and powdered silver, and once the scar heals, you get the Harry Potter effect. It'll throb in warning upon vampires.
Mm-hmm. Also, this is once again this is actually one of those right but also wrong thing. Decapitation and cremation are typically the best ways, but they're wrong when they say no vampire can survive it. Some have survived those, though they are the exceptions. But it's one of those. Once again, they're mostly right in this case, but they're not completely. But now let's get to the actual truth of what the vampires are from them, which this place was coming from themselves.
Yep.
It begins in Nehekara, 1,650 years before Sigmar was born, let alone founded his empire. In the lands of King Lazimir, they drove out the great necromancer Nagash. After 100 years of war, Nagash was defeated, though not for the last time, and his works were ordered to be destroyed. However, Nagash had a contingency plan. When Nagash was both the high priest of the mortuary cult, dedicated to finding eternal life, and the king of Khemri, he turned the priests of the awakening away from their holy work towards his dark studies. Some among the priesthood resisted this perversion and were driven out or murdered.
Then there were others that fully embraced it, and this is where vampires kind of come from.
Muzoron the Wicked, one among these who rose to the trusted position of the High Priest of Lamia. The jewel of the edge of the Crystal Sea, one of their
Which I think is now known as the Bitter Sea or Sour Sea.
Muzoron used his position to poison the mind of Princess Neferetem. They changed this a bit, but long story short, not wrong. Destined to become the Queen of Lamia. Neferetem was a willful girl and fascinated with magic. And Death, who was frustrated with the Moshman cult's unwillingness to allow women to enter the society. Secretly, Muzoron nurtured her thirst for this forbidden knowledge, coaching her in how to get to Nagash, what he learned at Nagash's side. After his fall, she was only too willing to delve into it. And after her father took Nagash's position as the king of Khemri, she began her rule of Lamia. Behind the locked doors of the palace, she studied necromantic magics. They started testing, doing all the nasty shit. That they even had to this even culminated in a attack on the palace when a rebellion went against her, when people started to realize that things were kind of getting a little weird.
Basically, they were seeing similar stuff that happened during Nagash's
rule.
And
that's when she used dark magic to bring them down. The remaining rebels were rounded up and executed, leaving only those in the Molchre cult whom Muzoron trusted. With their aid, continued their studies.
And eventually they created a prototype for the elixir of life, since,
Yeah, because Nagash was full-on immortal. Not really. Like, his soul was immortal, but his body less so. But they created sort of a knockoff. Their version of the immortal actually gave immortality, but it fundamentally changed the nature of beings. They became the first vampires.
So if you're wondering, they kind of pulled a Tremere.
Yeah, they weren't willing. They weren't servants of Nagash. They just used his shit, and obviously that's gonna. Well,
some of them served Nagash, but at the end of the day, when he failed, they just had their own schemes, or they were the descendants of his servants.
The mortuary cult of Lamia cut all of its ties with the other priests and began reformations of their things, even encouraging females to join. The temple was rebuilt. Neferetem invited her cousin, Khalid Nefer, the warrior queen of Liberus, to join her cult. Khalida rejected her offer and became suspicious of the changes going on in Lamia, because she was essentially a devout of one of the gods. Word that Khalida knew her secret, Neferetem accused her cousin of treason and attempted to kill her, which dragged everything into a big kerfuffle. Neferetem won because vampirism, and whilst Khalida lay dying, the vampire bit her own tongue and kissed her cousin, transferring her curse. However, Khalida was so devout that she prayed as she died, and Asip answered, drawing the taint from her blood and replaced it with pure poison, granting her a holy death. It is said that although her death was holy, it was not complete, and Khalida lived on as an eternal guardian of the temple. But yeah, she's she's a Tomb King character, if you couldn't get. She rose from the dead and has just as much bone to pick with her cousin later on.
So basically, she's a vampire, starts feeding on people. Then there's a guy named Arbarash who kind of had a crush on her. He figured out that she was a fucking vampire. And then he decided to drink the elixir of life to essentially join her because, guys do a lot of things to smash. He wants to smash like that bird. Llama smash. And he became a vampire. I believe this is the origins of the Blood Dragon line.
But he won't be known as the Blood Dragon for a while. You can also see the beginning of the Necrocs also with
which is Wasoran.
Priest. Yeah,
so that's three of them.
At this point, there's no bloodlines yet. Well, there's bloodlines, but they haven't been officially.
We have the founders. Come on, let's continue.
Abarash was not completely a monster though, and he tried to set up rules for his kin to follow, ostensibly as a way of protecting themselves. Only kill the criminals and slaves. Don't kill the ordinary citizens. From then on, don't feud amongst yourselves.
They also were banned from blood feuds because he called his line Trueborn at the time.
Yeah, because a feud among immortals can be a very nasty thing. But then Neferetem's older brother, Asharon, found out the elixir himself and drank it himself, and she couldn't really do anything about it because, by that point. He was, he did it already. What else can you do?
Is that where the Von Karstein came from?
No, Asheron, that is the
Strigoi.
beginning. That is the beginning of the Strigoi.
Okay. Yeah, I keep forgetting which are which because the founders don't
I will
usually
say
matter.
this does begin. This let's do this way. She never fucking forgave Asheron for this.
And that's why that's why when the Strigoi tried to find other land, she sent out agents to kill them.
Yeah.
And that betrayal is actually what really drove them mad.
And under essentially the God Queen, Lamia descended into tyranny and religious intolerance. It wasn't really hard for rebellion. Agents of the other cities began to stir up rebellion, horrified by the blood cult and veneration of the death of Nagash.
So what happens is this dude named Setep, who has conquered so much, rallies an entire army to just put this shit down. Except there's a guy named Vashinesh who betrayed him.
He sold out to Lamia, and because she was so he found the elixir of life and this immortality thing fucking awesome.
It's almost like because he was the descendant directly of Nagash, it was a mistake.
Redemption is sometimes a thing, not in this case. She even married him because, I don't know, liked him a lot. The King of Lamia and Kolro of the growing city of vampires, they plotted to keep the other cities of Nakar distant, essentially, disunified. But then King Alcazar the Conqueror managed to mobilize he came back and brought war to Lamia by invoking the names of the old gods. He laid siege with an army of the Southlands. After arriving in the city, they were horrified to be not only by the military of Lamia, but an army of the dead raised by Wazoron. Fighting back their fear, they tried. Though outnumbered, the army of Lamia could obviously, as an army of the dead, they could just get back up again. The mortals, less so, and traitors eventually turned against their masters. The chariots of the Jackal Squadron coated the streets with blood, and vampires did not flee, were forced to battle on the steps of the temple. And eventually, Lamia fell. Simple as that.
Although, several of them managed to escape.
Yeah, I said eventually they ran.
They actually mentioned a couple other guys, Matmeses and Harakte.
Yeah. By then, though, Nagash was coming back, and, well, this thing about magic, especially with magic done by Nagash, just magic in general, if magic's tainted by a source, and undeath is tainted by Nagash so utterly, you're his. And they learned this the hard way.
Yeah? And
at first they were cool serving Nagash because they thought they could, get his precisions back, but they kind of realized really quick that the power that Nagash was giving them was binding them deeper to him, especially when their leaders all, vassalized themselves willingly to Nagash, which bound all of them to Nagash.
Well, except Neferata really seethed at how he was trying to dominate her. Mainly because she wasn't the favorite.
Yeah, Van Hash was. Van Hash hit upon an ingenious solution to their problem. Suspecting the control of Nagash started to rely on the living vampire wearing his ring, and believing the great necromancer's assurances it would return to the grave, Van Hash allowed Alcazar to cut him down at the height of a battle. The vampires were free to feel control, and only Wazoron remained. And the Necrarchs actually are loyal to Nagash. The others scattered to the wind.
Because Wazoron was his disciple. By the way, check out this great art of the Strigoi here with his army.
The Ghoul Kings.
Lovely.
Wazoron stayed by Nagash's side while he ranted and raved about vampires' fickleness.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, as they go on what happens to the vampires, Matisse and Harak vanished out of history, though it's rumored they went to Cathay and Southlands, who may be lost bloodlines. Asheron created the Strigos. Neferata wandered around, influencing other nations. And the other guys, Wazoron stayed by his side.
Yeah, I'm just because this is getting dragging on, because this is just their origins.
Yeah, Van Hash. Yeah, I'm just gonna take the final thing. Van Hash returned Nagash as he promised he would. And then there's the rise of the Strigos Empire,
which I already covered.
Long story short, Strigos was pretty cool, and trying to create a second, better Lamia, Asheron, invited all the vampires back except the Necrarchs, those dirty, stinking Nagash worshippers. invited them all back, and he essentially said, "We'll follow the old rules. Just be, be content. Don't fight amongst ourselves, and let's have a good life here." However, remember how I mentioned Neferata had a grudge to pick? Well, she essentially poisoned the opinion of all the other vampires, essentially, and got them to raise an orc walk that destroyed all Strigoi, and betrayed them, and betrayed the Strigoi at the last moment, and killed a lot of them. And that betrayal is what, and eventually the fall from grace is what generated them.
Because, you see, they were badly destroyed population-wise. And on top of that, all of the good lands, so to speak, all of the good points of influence were taken by the others, and they collectively worked together to fuck him and his kin.
Oh yeah, Asheron's dead. Asheron is dead with a D.
His bloodline, though, basically they were shut out collectively.
Which also was a big thing. They actually kind of have a Blood Angels thing where they have a thing about like Daddy dying, like ah.
Yeah, that didn't help. They kind of went nuts. They all usually have some form of insanity.
Yeah, and megalomania. But now but the vampires wouldn't really emerge as an actual problem until much later when the Empire becomes a thing. Specifically, Sylvania. Long story short, Sylvania never was fun. Sylvania always kind of sucked.
Like, here's the thing. Sylvania, even back in the... it's very simple. So, here's the basic backstory. There's a bunch of tribes of men, both in Bretonnia and in the Empire. And Sigmar unified a bunch of them. Because he's Sigmar Helgenhammer. He rocks the hammer. He's backed by the Comet. He's backed by Ulrich. There are some tribes, though, that rejected him. One of them you might know of as the Norsii, who became the Norskins. Another one were the Fenons, who were native to the hills, moors, and boggy forests of Sylvania. The Fenons rejected him, and he had to take them by conquest.
Yeah, Sigmar got up to a lot. Sigmar got up to a lot in his day.
And the Fenons never were really fully happy, but they incorporated eventually. The problem was Sylvania was always kind of shit. Like, even before the Warpstone.
Here's the last record. Here is the last human official ruler of Sylvania. Otto von Drac, descendant of a long line of dark wizards and necromancers who built their castles on points of mythical energy that pervaded Sylvania and used that power to power sacrifice rituals. He was a madman who stuck the peasant's head on pikes for fun, and once arrived at a feast riding a bear, owned 1,000 hats, and was convinced he was a reincarnation of Sigmar. Well, he was drunk at least.
So, yeah, okay. Eventually, yes, like the Drachenwald, which was actually a province of the Empire, it had its own elector count and everything. Sylvania had the same, and that was the Von Dracs. As a whole, the Von Dracs were pretty shit. They badly ran their land. They had high taxation.
Tyrants.
They were tyrants. And Otto was the worst of the worst. Easily. By fucking far.
Best thing, he didn't have, as he got older, he didn't have a single male heir. And he wanted his younger brother to fucking die. He would rather his brother die than inherit. He tried to find a husband for his daughter Isabella, but no one wanted to inherit Sylvania. Let's put it that way. People young bachelors gave up the chance to marry a beautiful woman and inherit land because it was Sylvania.
Well, on top of that, they had to deal with Otto, I think, and Leopold.
Yeah, but Leopold he was dying.
Leopold wasn't, and he was still pretty bad.
Yeah.
Let's be fair, the Von Dracs as a whole were pretty awful.
And then fell ill, and then this dude, he's this mysterious wanderer calling himself Vlad von Karstein arrived in Castle Drakenhof. And he offered a chance of thing. Leopold didn't want to take this offer, but the first denifestration of Drakenhof. Yes, the first. There are many. But let's put it this way: he got back up. Vlad got back up, tossed him out of the window, and after they woke a priest, he was married on the spot. And then he died moments after that, and then Von Drac died very quickly afterwards. Vlad became the new ruler.
And actually, here's another example before we get in. Here's another reason why Otto sucked and why the Von Drax suck. They regularly would hire mercenaries who would just raid villages and fucking capture people for the sacrifices.
Yeah, I mean, if the land's ruled, who cares? Yeah, who cares who rules it? Yeah, and by killing the fucking incompetent, tyrannical, and evil people who ruled the land, Vlad's popularity was assured.
Literally,
he also lowered taxes.
How easy.
Nothing.
Oh no, he lowered it in the form of, you see, the Sylvanians by this point, because the Von Drax regularly were necromancers, which is the big reason no one else wanted to fucking marry into them. Because, corruption of the soul, that's a real thing in the setting. They don't want to. It's the accursed line sort of thing. Actually, the best way to describe it is, you've ever read Rats in the Walls? It's like the Delapore family. Yeah, like the Delapore from the locals' point of view. It's genuinely horrifying.
Yeah, he lowered the taxes from like 90 to something reasonable, like half.
Yeah, to like half, and then he'll occasionally ask for people. Which, hey, given that the Von Drax just took, that's still better.
What about with these things? He dealt with the bandits. He lowered taxes to practically nothing. Enforced the law. Never drunkenly ordered the random executions.
That's another thing Otto did.
Yeah, they mentioned that. He sometimes executed his liegemen, accounting for the 2nd to 13th defenestrations of Dragonhof, and drove away most of the priests.
I love the mental image of Vlad ordering the window to be replaced every time before he throws someone out of it. Can't you see him just doing that? Get another window, another window, another window.
Yeah, and Isabella felt sick. He had his people's sympathy. People actually gave a shit. Unfortunately, nothing could be done, and Vlad said he would treat her himself. Thus far, he had respected Isabella's wishes and refrained from passing his curse to her, but he didn't actually want her to die, because some part of this withered soul actually loved her. And he embraced her that night, and 3 nights later, she rose again. Things were quiet, for a while, but then more vampires started being arisen from this, and more
vampires became, and on top of that, the undead were amassing, although thankfully, they're not attacking the village. It's just being discerning, though.
Unexplained deaths became more frequent, including mostly the enemies of the Von Karstens, but,
eaten by wolves, died of fright, or they just fell.
The 14th to 15th defenestrations, but they are a matter of heated debate.
You see, what happened was GW learned about this thing called the defenestration of Prague, and they really loved it.
I thought it was hilarious.
Don't get me wrong, it is hilarious.
And after 2 centuries of rule, the vampires changed their identities many times to hide the fact they never age. Pretending to be their own heirs was a ruse that could never really actually work forever. Eventually, the witch hunters started showing up. The crusade is called. No one ever comes back. In fact, here's the actual full-on vampire timeline.
Yep.
They even have Luther Harkin again in 867. Norse raiders bound for Lustria capture an imperial merchant ship, unwillingly taking on board the vampire Luthen Harkon's body. When the ship arrives, they're either enslaved or made undead. He creates an empire in southern Lustria.
What the fuck is he doing on that ship?
No one knows. Literally, it's just a flat-out mystery. He disappears. He was one of Lamia's guard captains and one of the blood dragons, like lieutenants, and he just disappeared for centuries before he just showed up. Doesn't 100% matter, but yeah, goes over some things like the first Ghoul Kings, what the Ghoul Kings,
Night of the Restless Dead, the Red Duke. Norgul the Necrarch rages all the lands between the Arana Mountains and the Southern Seas in the War of Blood. He enters the Temple of Myrmidia to steal the Tome of Wisdom, instantly turns to ash.
And then there's the Vampire of Ascendancy in Sylvania. The Red Duke rises again and kills the Duke of Aquitaine. The Red Duke disappears into the forest. None know if he's still there.
Just imagine him just like holding court like in a crack shack in the woods.
A little crossover with Mordheim. The minions of Vlad von Karstein enter Mordheim to collect the warp dust that fell there. Vlad plans to use the warp stone to aid him in summoning a legion of the undead.
And actually, that is a thing. Warpstone, while it's more commonly used by the Skavens, like crack, and occasionally by the other forces of chaos to do things, undead actually find it very useful too, because small amounts of it are very effective at aiding in necromantic rituals.
Also, since it's pure magic and they're mostly immune to mutation, they are more able to, they're more able to use it without suffering the ill effects.
Yeah, so it's actually a really simple shortcut to just raise hordes of undead. Or to do dark magic.
The Wars of the Vampire Counts begins. Vlad dies. Vlad comes back and kills the guy who killed him. Vlad dies again.
Yeah, he dies a lot. Don't worry, though. It's fine.
Yep. Vlad has died many times. The Vampire War ends.
Vlad's
Isabella
died
commits
more
suicide.
times than Boogie.
Isabella von Karstein commits suicide. The remaining vampire counts bicker over who is the next Count of Sylvania. A string of deaths amongst the nobles and Nolan blame on the undead, creating a vampire panic that results in the beheadings of several innocents. Fritz and Peter von Karstein, two of Vlad's gets, besiege Mittelheim and Nuln, respectively, to prove themselves. Yeah, like literally a dick measuring contest. Conrad von Karstein, ruler of Sylvania, the Mad. This dude is called the Mad, even amongst vampires. He's stopped 21 years later, finally defeated. Manfred von Karstein shows up a decade later and attacks the Empire. Almost captures Altdorf. Forced to retreat. The Vampire Count Wars finally end when he's defeated at Hellfend. Some minor stuff. Manfred comes back. The Storm of Chaos.
Ah, yes, Storm of Chaos. The events where G-dubs had to cheat to win.
Happens.
And they still didn't. They still didn't.
Yeah, they even flat out just say here, Vlad, who was von Hesch. Yeah, so if you can tell, that's why Vlad's bloodline was so powerful. He was one of the the prime vampires from Mulnherkara. He was that ring he kept bringing him back to life. That was that ring that Gash personally gave him. And now we move on.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the von Karstein ring. It's the ring Nagash gave him as proof of their pledge. However, essentially it broke with his death because oaths are a funny thing. He swore until his dying breath he and the vampires would serve Nagash. Well, the ring brought him back to life, but he didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So they go into details about the returns. So basically,
the blood kiss is a very personal thing.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, basically, the vampires are popular because, again, for some reason, especially with the Sterling, although not as much with the Sterlinders as with the Von Drax, the humans just tend to be shitter. It's almost like no one wants to be in Sylvania, so they send the incompetent there.
Yeah. The Sylvania, there are many who would gladly return the Von Karstein rule, but yeah, the nature of the beast.
That blood kiss.
He shall bring you eternity and the greatest power.
Yeah, and you'll regret it, probably.
Yeah, the nature... Yeah, long story short, the becoming a vampire, it kills you. Like, it's sort of like World of Darkness, where it kills you and then kind of raises something back up. That is... essentially, it's almost a facsimile of you. It has all your memories, has all your emotions, but they're all warped. It's different.
Yeah,
you're not
for example,
you anymore.
Priests suggest they do enter the Garden of Mor, but then get turned back. And because they're an abomination and it's like a very traumatizing experience. Scholars and wizards think it's more that it's because of the transformation. You kind of see stuff you're not meant to. And the thing is, you get back up, but you're not entirely you no more. Because within is a monster that wants to just do horrible things. Some see it as a separate force, the beast within. Hey, it's almost like another game line. Others just don't give a fuck and just embrace it.
Yeah, there's like the Necrarchs. They don't have that whole beast within argument. They're monsters. They know it.
They know it. They don't give a shit. They serve their dead god. Their dead god who will rise and end the world.
goes into some of the relationship between those who embrace and those who embrace. But long story short, a vampire birth is never accidental. It's always on purpose.
Yep. Vampires usually note that there's something within them that can be nurtured into something greater. So there's this like little spark they see, which ain't great for you necessarily.
They always make they sometimes have their pick between their followers. Sometimes a vampire will even embrace a ghoul or necromancer in his retinue.
In fact, that's actually commonly, especially for necromancers, that's something they kind of hope for.
Yeah, because necromancy extends your life, but no one, unless you're fucking Heinrich Himmler, your immortality usually sucks.
I didn't know Heinrich Himmler was in this game too.
Himmler.
I thought it was Heinrich Himmler. That would have been the second game about vampires that had a former Nazi in charge of something.
Others have far more disconcerting and unusual prerequisites in their selection. For example, the Blood Dragons will only search for the world's greatest warriors, whatever their class or origin. Anyone that meets their standards, typically being able to defend against a Blood Dragon, usually is considered a prospect. All vampires, though, maintain a singular prejudice.
Gave me a really stupid idea. I know it's not how it works, but I'm just envisioning an orc vampire.
All vampires, however, maintain a singular prejudice against non-humans. It is perhaps not impossible for a dwarf, elf, or halfling to be made a vampire, but it is unheard of for one of the blooded to break their inveterable snobbery.
I'm just envisioning an orc vampire, and it's so dumb.
Terrible.
Can't you see it?
Yeah, I'm imagining like a Strigoi doing it out of the most base desperation.
No, Strigoi doing it out of the most hateful spite for the thing that destroyed Strigoi.
Strygos,
I mean.
The chain. It's not a gradual change. It's fast and it's awesome. Like there's none of that. There's none of that. Like there's none of that gang stuff. It's it's just the vampires will embrace what comes upon them.
Basically, you wake up and you're like, all those things I secretly think about all the time, like strangling my coworker, or getting vengeance on people, or just doing whatever the hell I want. What are they gonna do to stop me? Watch this, and you just crush a boulder with your hands.
You are the master of your own soul. Not really, but they think it.
Yeah.
The self-mastery comes with basery. The rush of power is often intoxicating, overwhelming, sometimes too much. Many vampires lose themselves in the rush of excess, and innocents are slaughtered in their score. Rivals are butchered, old enemies tortured, and taboos are broken and heresy committed.
Here's a horrifying image for you. I like this. Look at it.
Yeah. The monsters come, little Timmy. This is why you shouldn't suck your thumb at night. You
sucked your thumb at night. I'ma eat it.
Yeah, but these vampires draw the attention of witch hunters, so they're not usually. So that's usually held back.
Yep. Basically, the ones that survive the initial culling are usually the most cautious or smart.
It's not vampires.
The Bloodwa. Yeah, come on, can't you envision the dreaded Bloodwa where like other orcs band together to beat the shit out of him?
I'm thirsty.
The Bloodwa.
It's not that vampires must dwell in secret, but rather that there are often better ways of doing things, protocols and duties. To feed too widely or too wildly is often considered inappropriate. Just as nobles of the land have a duty to their serfs, even though their lives are nothing to them, the shepherd must tend to the flock even though he feeds upon them. Vampires have a duty to watch over the lesser creatures that surround them. Firstly, to protect them as a steady flow of sustenance, but more importantly, to give their flock something far greater than even each other to admire. Something that causes them to know terror, awe, and majesty. Men need kings, they say, but kings need vampires.
Kings need vampires like a smoker. No, kings need vampires like a person with lungs needs cigarettes.
Yep, vampires need to choose their kin carefully, but some are too immersed in their chosen beliefs to have a large bloodline. Many vampires take those they consider the potential brethren as apprentices, assistants, courtiers, or even companions for many years before they bestow the kiss, as well as after. This gives them time to ensure quality.
Mainly because you need to kind of know the the natural inclinations of the person you're going to turn into a vampire, because remember, you had your wild party years just randomly murdering people.
Mhm.
So you need to make sure they're at least either have a good enough head to know when you can get away with it, or just cautious enough to think, if I do all the things I know I can do now, the vampire hunters might kill me because I ain't gotten experienced enough yet with my murder fists to stop them. And there might be like
The
a
red
lot of
thirst.
them.
The red thirst. This goes into the nature of blood. There's no goes into the nature of blood within vampires, and essentially, vampires. It's their own. It's the only thing they act. It's their only sustenance. They can feel it under every human, which is part of the reason they kill, and they will kill you by instincts without hesitation, and they will adore every second of it.
Oh yeah, and on top of that, to give you an idea on how murderous, bestial they can be, if you have like a small cut or if you're bleeding a bit, that just smells like a very delicious brisket to them.
Most who try to resist the thirst go mad and fall into a killing frenzy in devouring, and no feasting from it on, however voluminous, will ever calm them. This is how, for instance, if you play Total Warhammer, how the Vargeist and the Varghulf are born. This is what happens when you lock a vampire in a crypt or cave, or if you're going to be really nasty, a coffin, and leave them there. It's not fun. And you can't turn back.
Yeah.
There are some exceptions in regards to their need for blood. For instance, exceptions. The Necrarchs have discovered ways to feed their timeless existence with warpstone or pure magic. The Strigoi can make do with the blood of the dead and vermin. Abarash, that has the name Blood Dragons, he actually figured out a way to get rid of the thirst entirely by drinking a dragon. Yeah, so that's one of the only ways to cure vampirism's thirst. Murder a dragon and drink it. Yeah, if you can do that, props to you. You deserve it.
I do love the idea though of because when you mentioned that they go reversibly insane, I'm just reminded of from Saints Row 2, Johnny Gat burying Shogo alive, but like replace that with a vampire doing it to a rival.
Yeah, I don't think it's not even often. Sometimes it's just done as because they can be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Centuries of age.
Also, it's genuinely a fate worse than death, I think, for them.
Yeah, they go completely insane and devolve into animals, essentially. And as they note, vampires have eventually figured out the unique tasteness of blood. Like with any society, they come in taste. A drunk's blood is actually mildly alcoholic to vampires. Disease can pollute taste, and the effect. Morning blood is lighter and sweeter than night blood. Drinking is always enjoyable, however, even for the most abstinent of vampires, satisfying their physical urge and their terrible mental need. Because yeah, even like as you get some of the older vampires can restrain their urges for a lot longer, but they need to drink more, and it still never stops being good.
So here's the thing: vampires don't need to drink every night. Newly made ones often do, but usually you still want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like why would you give up? Why would you give up eating and drinking even if you didn't have to? As Isabella von Karstein puts it, let there be wine and blood and slaughter. Restraint is for mortals.
Even when blood's necessary to prevent weakness, the need still doesn't countermand reason. The likelihood of losing themselves in frenzy or depredations only arises after a much longer denial. So a vampire, like even older ones that only need to drink like a century, they still probably at least drink something every few weeks or a month.
Yeah, they do if only do it because the longer it takes, the more likely they are to like an alcohol falling off the fucking wagon. They're addicted.
And that's partially why the Strigoi are so nuts, because they figured out ways to kind of cheat around this because of how fucked they were.
Mm-hmm.
They figured out that dead bodies count, as do vermin. It tastes
if I remember correctly,
but it works.
It's horrible. It tastes like you would imagine eating a corpse. And the Necrarchs, they just get off of sustenance of magic, of evil.
Although the Strigoi also found another trick. They can actually just sleep for a long frickin' time.
Yeah. And it goes into the things in regards to feeding. But yeah, at the end of the day, vampires do what they want. They are the predators. If if they follow the will of if they follow the will of the law of the laws of Vlad put down, or if they follow Nagash's my Aberash's code, most might, but they're at the end of the day they're their own man.
They do what they
Then there's
want.
the curse. But then there's the curse Nagash laid on them because Nagash wasn't happy that the vampires just fucked off when they weren't needed when they realized they weren't bound by magic anymore.
So here's the thing: vampires originally didn't have these curses.
Yeah, they used to be completely OP.
But then they decided to screw Nagash, and this is Nagash's punishment. First of all, sun. Vampires can actually tank this to a degree, but yeah, no. The sun will kill even the most powerful of fucking vampires.
Yeah, which is why people like the von Karsteins developed magic to summon storm clouds to essentially stop the sun.
On top of that, it's not as bad. It's not as in World of Darkness. Even if you bundle yourself up, you're still gonna face second death in the sun. In fantasy, you can get away with being heavily cloaked up, although that's a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. It's if you need to.
It works, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Best have your minions do it for you. The older vampires though, like Vlad, he could walk around the sun no problem.
Well, no, it hurts him. It's just he tanks it.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't really a problem for him.
Because that's the thing, vampires, it takes a long time for, even in the sun, it still takes time for them to die.
Silver is, it's pretty much like a holy weapon. It's going to fuck them up. In fact, it's actually more dangerous than the sun.
Fun fact, if you're wondering, I don't know why silver became so popular among killing werewolves and other critters. But I know that in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, in the the Middle Earth lore, it's because silver is actually closer in tune with the literally tune of the one creator god Eru. Gold was tainted by Morgoth. That's why it instills greed so much.
Yeah. Also, they know something about hawthorn and silvern, which is a hardwood, which is related to that Russian thing with regards to the killer. Once again, related to everything about Kislev and vampire hunting, it's a bunk. It means nothing.
Yeah, it's worse than a sword. So that society that was formed around the Pavel, they're probably using that and getting wrecked.
Mm-hmm. Then it goes into magic and how souls work with it. Necrotic scholars believe that upon perceiving the death blood kiss, the vampire's soul become an ever-gushing spring of true dar, pure dark magic. Though this is true or not, the magical nature of a vampire is obviously oblivious to anyone gifted with witch sight. Those with witch sight, they are wreathed in purple wind of death, flowing like a coat. Likewise, any non-magical gift of mortal with sixth sense will feel uncomfortable and explicitly upset in the presence of a vampire. Some vampires can cloud this, but it's a rare trait even amongst vampires.
And most magisters don't think they can, because here's the thing: most vampires can't. It's a
but
rare
the ones
few
who
that
do,
can.
but the ones who do will slip unnoticed. Witchbane, the myth of garlic is a myth. It's just that there are some things though that actually can help. Obviously, the power of God is pretty useful.
Well, the funny thing is, garlic doesn't really work. Hell, vampires in Bretonnia actually like people who often eat garlic as their prey. It adds nice flavor. But other herbs work just fine.
Mm-hmm. Funny enough, that scientific gossing that also applies to chaos. Any god.
Any god will do. Even I'm just now envisioning an orc vampire hunter who gets a sign of Gork or Mork, he's not sure which, and just throws it at the vampire, and it's like a rock, and it hurts them even more because he threw it really hard. Come on, don't you want to see an orc vampire hunter?
No, even better, a goblin vampire hunter.
Goblin vampire hunter, he throws Gork and Mork effigies made out of his own crap, because that's something they do.
Mm-hmm. Running water. Just as the sun turned its back on a vampire, so too have other great givers of life, the streams and rivers feeding the old world. Vampires are burnt and weakened if as they are the sun if they try and wade or ford over running river more than a yard across. Flying or leaping these bodies of waters causes no damage, nor does any bridge, from simple fallen tree to a great vent. Rowing or sailing is also safe.
So the
It's
vampire
just
refusing
they
to
can't
cross
swim.
running water, that's kind of bullshit. They can just fine. It's just if they get immersed in it.
Yeah. Yeah, is this why? Yeah, that's why the Luther Harkon was able to cross the whole Great Ocean. It's just they can't. They sink. Let's put it that way. They
They
sink.
sink and burn and explode.
Mm-hmm. And the mirror doesn't do any damage, but well, they once again, don't have souls, don't reflect them, don't have any reflection.
By
This
the way,
works
this
for
pisses
anything.
off quite a few vampires because
Yeah.
they're usually pretty vain.
Yeah, even the Lamians. Furka, this is any reflection. Even like rain puddles and polished brass will work. This curse, it's less useful for vampire hunters than one might think, except for those Hawkeye fanatics who never stop darting around to shine surfaces and who carry a hand mirror everywhere. Also, vampires don't actually cast reflections either, which is actually probably something you notice more quickly.
Although those vampires who seem to at least brave the sun from time to time can.
Mm-hmm. And finally, of course, fire and sword.
Fire always works.
Just, could be better.
And if you're wondering, swords kind of work.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah?
It's better than nothing at that point. But that shouldn't be your first tool. And of course, then there goes into how vampires live with ambition.
Well, yeah, because vampires initially it's all fun and games. It's great, right? For even decades, you're probably going to be that way. Then time keeps
What's
marching
left?
on. And
What's
on.
left?
And on. And eventually, well, what's the point?
If they don't have great ambition, they're going to just fall into a rut and, as they put it, a great ennui and sink into self-destruction.
That's also, where all this ambition comes from. Because if they don't, they just kind of slowly lose their minds.
Also, vampires typically will sire only amongst those they believe will have the ambition. Because, why would you embrace a lazy fuckwit? Specifically, but mind you, ambition is a different sort. Like the blood dragons, they just want to, get, they're shown in protagonists. They want to get stronger, fight better opponents. And necrocs, they want a hole away in a fucking tower somewhere and do horrible things to the few peasants they capture and experiment. But that's its own ambition. It's a goal that they move towards. The Strigoi, the Lamians, and the Von Karsteins, they'll have much more physical ambitions, power, land, wealth,
vengeance
influence.
In the case of the Strigoi, because all of them have a desire of vengeance.
Yeah, but they also go with power, to rebuild and have a great thing.
Well, yeah, because they so rarely have any of that.
Yeah. The Lamians and Von Karsteins are rife with interscene conflicts, ancient feuds aimed at nothing short of genocide to pay recompense for heinous crimes. To 10 fresh oafs of vengeance swarm before breakfast for the most trivial perceived insults. Rarely do these things actually even escalate into a war. The immortality of their race is kind of created a taboo
just
against
self-sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a vampire. One of the only things that can really kill a vampire reliably is another vampire. So they kind of have a gentleman's agreement not to kill each other.
Unless you're stupid enough to directly
sending
challenge
proxies
them.
against each other, sending proxies and humans against each other. That's fair game. Mm-hmm.
And the bloodlines, we kind of covered them, so I think we can move on.
Well, let's go a little into the relationship vampires have with humanity in both the literal and not literal sense. Many wondered if vampires need to feed on humans makes them irredeemably monsters. Could a vampire ever actually care for a human? Certainly, vampires are free of any fetter of morality. They have no need to be good or evil. They see nothing good or noble in acting for the protection of man or mankind. Just they see nothing wrong or evil about raising the dead or drinking blood. Many vampires, they look favorably upon mortals, though, and can even enjoy their company and their ways, wanting to protect them. However, this is usually only the kind of protection you get from the kind you like with your dog.
Yeah, they treat you
Or
like
pet.
pets. I don't know where this is in the pages since I don't know how far you skipped.
It's page 42, top of the page.
Oh.
Just kind of, it's right above society. It's right.
Oh, you're still on chapter 4. I moved on to chapter 5.
Sorry, I was just finishing the last thing because I thought it was interesting.
That is cool. But you know it's also
Yeah,
cool?
essentially, a vampire might even shed a tear for a favorite human, but just like you'll move on eventually from that dog, you will move on.
Yep. Vampires don't really see you any more than animals. Flesh.
Oh, I like this one. A vampire may indeed care for his flock, but in the end, the sheep is still sheep, and even the most charitable shepherd will not shed a tear for the time for roasting, unless you're from Averland.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to a joke about how Averlanders are Welsh and fuck the sheep.
So, again, bloodlines, I think we can mostly skip this since we kind of covered them.
Yeah, it's mostly just goes into their unique things. The blood dragons, they are knights to a warrior. They're a warrior.
There's
they're
one
warrior
thing.
lodge.
Mind if I read it? Other bloodlines. History records that there are 2 other members of the first children, Matmesis, the very fat and corrupt chief justice, and Harakte, the brilliant and sinister court vizier. After the betrayal of Nagash, however, they were never heard from again. Most believe they were killed by Nagash, but it's also possible they journeyed elsewhere and created their own lineages. Marco Polaire's writings of Cathay include legends of immortal eunuch sorcerers that drink the souls of men. And there are tales from the jungles of Ind in the Southlands about mad priests who tear out men's heart to feed to their dark gods. Maybe these are the children of Matmesis and Harakte.
And they have a price to pay. But yeah, before you do, you should look over at least some of the stat lines of some of the elder vampires.
That's fair. So basically, we already know about the blood dragons. They crave combat. They drink blood as you do, usually from their fallen foes.
Yeah, they even have they have some pretty interesting characters like the Red Duke. The Red Duke is here. He has a character sheet.
If they even have an oath.
Yeah.
Here's another blood dragon showing his true face because they're usually pretty good at imitating humanity. Like they're pretty good at
if they want
their inhumanity.
It's where they're more of a question of whether they care or not, though. They don't always care.
There's Abarash, Lord of Blood. Look at that, 84%.
That's not no, that's Warlock Harkon. That's just the Grandmaster of the Bloodkeep. That's not Abarash. That's just simply his second in command.
That's only his second in command.
Red Dukes tend to be a little better at 85.
Toughness. Let me look at the Scourge. 85, 75, toughness 80, agility. Yeah, these 26 wounds.
Also,
4 attacks, by the way.
Yeah, 26. Yeah, wonderful. Oh,
wearing got full plate.
Full plate, Knight Sword, Undead Nightmare. He's wielding.
You know the.
Oh, by the way, I just love this. Dodge blow plus 20 with agility 73. 93% chance to dodge a blow.
You say that, but here's the cursed part. I don't think he'd win, but we have a Chaos Warrior game, and our Beastman, I think, could actually do a pretty good fight against him.
Though also note for some other horrible things, he still carries 2 of his virtues from his days of being a Bretonnian questing knight.
I'm not gonna lie and say I don't know if our Beastman could win, but given he has the troll regenerative abilities, I think he'd give the Red Duke a good fight.
And
Red Duke would kill him though.
Yeah, good. It goes over some good, hooks for some of the vampires. Also, they go over a little interesting little thing if you go to a Bretonnia game, the Bloody Grail.
Basically, this is their take on
It goes up to Knights of Bretonnia who either are a bit gullible or maybe are a bit wicked. And when the lady doesn't show, this lady might show and give you another cup to drink from. Yeah, as you can imagine, it's
Here's
if you want to keep
the best part. So
Mhm.
Mousillon is well known for having bad vampires, and here's two of them: Merovec, and then there's Maldred, the lord of, because they were punished and Mousillon lost a lot of its lands. Then Maldred created what became known as the False Grail affair. Basically, he made a fake chalice, made a fake Lady of the Lake, kept the actual true, kept the actual, I forget their names of their priesthood ladies,
Yeah, I know you're talking to.
maidens.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what they're called, lake maidens or whatever. And he set this up. Basically, Mousillon's really well known for creating fake grails, and this is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, no one's 100% sure about this one because the Lady of the Night does it. But yeah, you can also find some in the Badlands. Then there's the Lamians. As this wonderful quote: "Behind every great man is a great woman, and behind those great women is me."
Yep.
They are
Neferata.
all about the plots. They are all about the plots, the schemes, and the silent influence, the knife in the dark.
Yeah, they're not really
Uniquely,
combatants. They can be. They're pretty
oh
good
yeah,
at it,
they're just
but
as dangerous. But why would you?
yeah, it's just dirtying the hands,
Yeah, as note, they're also quite good at keeping things secret, so much so that even the esteemed and pretty accurate Knights of the Raven, don't actually. They know they exist, but that's all they can say. We know there is a secret cadre of female vampires doing something behind the scenes, but what do they have a name? Things? Nope. Who knows?
Yeah, and
They
they're
they will never.
really good at selling people liking them.
As mentioned before, they primarily women, and they really like their subtle influence.
I was just actually looking up about because since they're mostly women and they almost certainly look for other women because of the foundation. I was just wondering if they do details about Lamian men.
Top of
They
society rarely
exist,
looks.
but I don't think they are many.
Oh God, no. It's also because of how the women are often not as noticed, which also makes it useful to them.
Yep. Rare still, there's males who impress them enough to be invited to the bloodline. So it happens occasionally, but they're considered low on the totem pole. There we go. I just wanted to look that up. Oh, and here's an example: Antiochus blend. Fun fact:
And
he is a priest of
you also
war.
got the famous, they got that famous character Genevieve there, from.
Yep.
Fun enough, she's actually one of the first Warhammer characters because she's from Drakenfels.
So there she is,
You know.
just kind of looking like an evil version of a Disney princess, which I think was the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Bland, one of the rare cases of a Lamian male. Helena
Not the
von
greatest
Kulper,
fighter in the
another one.
world, but you don't need to be. You don't need to be. You don't need to be when you're a Lamian.
Yeah, your
But
whole
even
point
then,
is you have proxies.
Yeah, but even then, if you look at his skill list, stats line, and talents, still not bad.
Yeah, not bad. So Lamians almost never will reside in crypts. Similar to blood dragons. I mean, blood dragons are more prone to sleeping in barracks, like blood barracks, night barracks, or
or on the
keeps.
move because they're nomadic also.
So you'll find them maybe hanging out in abandoned keeps or on, like it may be in a cave occasionally. Basically, places where shelter of sun. If they do sit around, it's usually in castles that they run.
Or they've wormed their way into. But the only place the Lamian is truly out and about is the Silver Pinnacle, their headquarters.
Yep, they hang out there, and the dwarves hate them for it because that was one of their holds. Necrarchs, these are the guys that are super big fanboys of Nagash. They're the only vampire lineage that stayed loyal.
And they're somehow less hated than the Strigoi.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Well, it's because they're useful. Very useful.
Yeah, because they usually are the strongest of mages.
They don't even really need to feel. Also, they're really good at staying out of the politics because they don't really care about that.
They don't care about playing around with mortal pets. They're merely sustenance. What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah. They mostly get on with just dark magic, and when they do drink, they usually do it pretty nastily and with a lot of casualties, but who cares?
You note that, yeah, none of them look really human. That's kind of the thing about the Necrarchs. They're just not. They almost never fight themselves, although if they do, they slam down the magics.
They also have some very powerful witch sight, and
they have very powerful servants.
As there's another thing, crossing thresholds. Necrarchs have actually a unique curse that they carry. They are unable to enter buildings that have been made the homes by the living until they're invited. Some say Nagash cursed them this way. Others saying that this was labeled, thrown on them by their founder for some weird reason. But yeah, Necrarchs need to make a very hard will save to enter through a building they haven't been invited in.
The other ones can do it just fine, but yeah, this is one of your few hopes if you're dealing with a Necrarch, although that's not going to matter. He's just going to order some toughs to beat you up.
Oh, I like this one. One of them's called Louis Cypher. What is it? A Bretonnian Necrarch.
He wants to absorb the power of the Waystones.
You and every other evil god.
I hope he fights a bunch of beasts who are angry that he's doing what they want to do. How would a Necrarch get someone to voluntarily open a door? Well, you see, you mind control them, which is pretty easy for them to do. Or you get a bunch of street toughs to just go in and beat them up.
Or, you just or even better, you cast Wind to Death and kill everyone in the house, and now no one living is alive to claim this as their home.
Yep, there's many ways that a Necrarch can just say, you know what? No.
Yeah, also, Necrarchs are, as masters of magic and undead, they created their own forms of monster, which are labeled on the next page. The Bat Spite, a flying spite that has been had its gossamer wings replaced with bat wings. Other cosmetic improvements.
Yeah.
The Spider Spite. Madame Kafkan's early experiments with the spites yielded many failures. One come from abandoning her attempt to restore their ability to fly, instead melding them with the body of a spider. The torso of a dead fairy. She mounted this miniature horror with the torso of a dead fairy mounted on the body of a furry black spider.
So what are spites again?
Essentially, it goes on. It's from this Madame Kafka story. Long story short, she was a crazy woman who essentially has a spites are as I said, Madame Kafka knows why her parents abandoned her and nurses a special grudge towards the Fae for stealing children away like her. Looking down from her tower towards the wildwood, she saw a means of ceasing her revenge. She captures the swarm of Fae nature spirits called spites. So yeah, they're woodland spirits. But yeah, imagine little fairies. Imagine little fairies are like little tree fairies because they're probably made of like wood. And now just imagine that merged into a spider.
There we go. I already like the cut of this one's jib. And there's other ones. Lairs of the Necrarchs. They prefer areas where there's great amounts of dar. Great amounts of where the winds of Shyish grow. Or where there's a good amount of warpstone.
Also, if you look at Zacharias the Unliving, a fully fledged Necrarch lore can have over 4 magic pips, which, for the record, is very hard which is pretty much the capacity of what most humans are ever capable of doing and beyond.
Oh, hey, Impset, thanks for you're a little late on the explanation, but yeah, I didn't know spites were forest spirits because they should be called sprites. I know why they did it, but yeah, I didn't. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't know it.
But yeah, anywhere dark, dank, and away from things, they love. Some adventure hooks, legend up madams, we only come in at night, and then here are the Strigoi. For now we sleep and we dream, but one day we will rise again and make our dreams real again. Every society needs a whipping, boy.
Yep, and that's the Strigoi.
It was not enough for Neferata and her brethren to simply be lords of Lamia. It was not enough that they drank the elixir of life and made immortal. they still have to find more ways to feel superior to others. It excludes people from their little cult. Yeah, the Strigoi have a very big bone to pick with the Lamians because, first off, they're complete opposites, and also, the Lamians really just held a grudge against it because Asheron got in when he wasn't invited, and they held that against them ever since.
Yep.
Ever since.
Basically, when their little empire of Strygos was destroyed by the Lamians essentially guiding an Orc Wa their way, they've never really forgiven them since, especially since they tried to get refuge from other vampires like they gave them, and were killed.
Hunted down like dogs.
So yeah, they are the big mad.
Also, the Lamians also riled up humans, human tribes to attack them. They riled up everyone. It was just the orcs that finally brought them down.
And what they do is they eventually a figure by the name of Vorag Bloodytooth, aka the Ghoul King, set about trying to rebuild the Lost Kingdom, but it didn't go well.
It's a pipe dream.
It's not happening.
Their ambition still burns bright. That's also another thing in notes. The Strigoi are weird in the sense that they are obviously the lowest totem pole, but they still see themselves as very highly, and they don't actually really like embracing, because they essentially believe that one day all the Strigoi are going to come back together and create new Strigos, and they believe that it should only be enterable for the worthy. And they essentially believe that usually is only reserved for, the old guard who were there when it happened. So every new Strigoi that's brought in is essentially seen as like a coat hanger. A hanger-on, like someone who's chasing the coattails of greatness, which is hilarious coming from these fuckers.
Yeah, because here's the thing. They act like, they act almost like Emperor Norton of California.
Except it's not cute.
It's not cute because it's a gibbering, half-mad wolf bat monster thing screaming orders and edicts to brainless whites who don't have no, understanding of what the fuck's going on, or ghouls who just go because they're basically monkey creatures. If you're wondering, ghouls are what happens if humans engage in cannibalism in Warhammer world.
Corrupts your soul.
It not only corrupts your soul, but it mutates you into it's the Lovecraft approach, actually. Ghouls are the same way in Lovecraft's work. Humans can become ghouls.
A Strigoi can drink blood like anyone else, and they would much rather prefer it. It's just they are deeply terrified of the humans, to a degree, but it's mostly their own kind.
Because of what they frickin' did.
That's why they stick to the graveyards. That's why they stick to the crypts. Because they're terrified other vampires will kill them, so they drink what no vampire will willingly ever drink. That's why their feeding and breeding is so out of the way.
And as a whole, they tend to not be the most psychologically stable of the bloodlines.
Oh god, no, yeah.
So here are some examples of that madness. There's Eudes the Shadow King. He became the terror of Wissenland because he saw in each young maid the face of his faithless wife, so he would just randomly murder all the women. He was the ultimate incel, the man who literally was cucked to undeath and came back. He literally was cucked to death and came back to try to get revenge. And then there's Urzin the Unrelenting, who he's not entirely gone in the head, but he thinks zombies can follow orders. And ghouls, and he tries to train them like they're in boot camp.
Yeah, you think
not all of them are this crazy, but they're usually fairly eccentric and a bit nutty.
And they've got some and I mentioned in regards to some of the only quote unquote monsters I would vampires I'd throw, just because if you look at their stat sheet, it's kind of they're very lopsided with very bad they're very lopsided. If they hit you, like if they get you unaware, they're the ultimate predator in the sense that they know how to hide, they know how to hunt like an animal. But that's really all they're good at.
Yeah, I mean, out of all of these are the guys that you can probably put down.
But the thing is, you'll obviously with planning and a lot of people and luck, but it's It's like, this is a much kinder fate than throwing a blood dragon. Well, technically, you might be able to beat a Lamian, but the Lamian wouldn't ever fight you. That's the thing. The Strigoi will fight you. He doesn't have the self-control long enough to plan or send minions out for that long. He will fight you eventually.
So, Gashnag the Black Prince. So, this is one of the border princes that actually is canon. Gashnag. So, unlike most Strigoi, he realized you can't really do the God King propaganda. You could, but that's not going to get as many people. Instead, he plays the Lamian's game and writes sagas about himself and pays bar. Basically, he runs propaganda. And on top of that, to justify and explain why he looks like Nosferatu if he took a bunch of meth and grew crazy hands.
A terrible curse.
Which, hey, that can happen. There are curses like that, and at worst, maybe he can disguise himself as a mutant.
And he only appears on the battlements and just waves to his people in like speeches and never actually completely shows his face.
And the thing is, he actually does try to run the state like a genuine prince. Like, he holds court, although only people he implicitly trusts can go there.
None and under a huge heavy cloak, regardless.
And on top of it, he makes a point to defend his people because in his mind...
ultra-violence.
Oh, yeah. Well, because in his mind, as all vampires do, this is his flock. This is his herd of cattle. You ain't taking my cows, man. I'll beat you up.
When ogres from the Black Mountains began to raid his village, he immediately rode out alone. He returned with a dozen heads on a pike, which he planted in around the village square, so the people would know they were safe.
So, yeah, Gashnag is a fairly... Even by vampire standards, like, he's actually copying Vlad's book. And he's doing a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah, not bad. Then there's Urzern, who he's doing the full Ghoul King approach.
Yeah, he's a little bit nutty. He's a little bit crazy. He genuinely thinks they're smart enough to hold order.
He's not going after Strigoi Empire. He's just doing this all to fuck with the Lamians.
Yeah, his goal is to just kill them.
And funny enough, he's not completely crazy. He actually, as it notes, he has mortal followers, and it doesn't just mean things. He's having his own little shadow war with the Lamians. Obviously, not as good as the Lamians can do it, but he's trying to fight them like they do. Hit them where it hurts. Their influence.
Well, he's not stupid. I'm just pointing out he's a little bit nutty because he thinks ghouls can easily fall, like they're intelligent enough to fight like soldiers. He's a little bit cuckoo.
I actually like one of the. It's actually a thing about him. One of the adventure hits about him. It's essentially a feud between a Lamian and Urzern breaks out to where essentially the parties caught in the middle between. It says adventurers receive an anonymous tip that someone in the town council is actually a Lamian in the skies. And after a lot of investigation, they discover which one it is, and some of the witch hunters. Of course, Urzern's the one that tipped them off. He can discover what his old enemy is doing. However, the Lamian tries to pull it up, pull a fast one and say, like, I've done nothing. Like, I might be a monster, but do you know who's trying to pull your strings? A greater monster.
And the problem is that actually it would probably work.
Yeah, because, this one actually looks human, but if you get one look at Urzern, you're like, oh, yeah, that's the monster we need to kill.
Yeah.
But Urzern doesn't give a shit about controlling the politics. He just wants the Lamians dead.
Also, the 13th Man, which reminds me of the film with the cannibalistic Neanderthals, the 13th Warrior.
The beast picks them off one by one. It goes to thing because Strigoi can be a clever monster that schemes, but more often than not, they're the monster
because they're not sane anymore. Not really.
Yeah, the enemy of the enemy, an isolated community in Everland, Greenskins. When the entire legion leaves behind the shadow. Things take a turn for the strange when a dying man rides the town with a filthy cloth objects, telling people to destroy the item before he comes for it. This idiot tomb robber robbed the vault of a Strigoi, and he's come fucking chasing it. And he's the one that riled up the Greenskins because they're running away from him in terror.
I love the enemy of my enemy. That one's pretty great.
Yeah, like I said, the Strigoi have some pretty good, adventure hooks.
I think they're probably my favorite of the Bloodlines.
Then there's von
before you go,
Karstein's.
Imsit, only in Warhammer can the immortal nightmares be competent rulers.
Yeah. The Warhammer is a very interesting age. Then there's speaking of the immortal monsters that rule, the von Karsteins.
Founded by Vashanush.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys have the most actual lore because they're so relevant to the meta plot.
Yeah, origin of the name. No one's 100% sure where fucking no one's sure why Vlad chose the name von Karstein. It just is.
He probably he just made it up because they're German, right?
Mm-hmm. It probably had meaning to him, but who knows? Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look it up, but it is interesting.
Pronunciation. I like this because this is just a retelling of what's happened. Pronunciation guide. Far away in Sylvania, the scholars of Reichland have only ever seen this name written down, and there's some confusion about how you pronounce this name. There's no short of confusion. The A is the A short as like you would say in cart? Is the R rolled? Is the
Karstein,
S?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the S like za like in Russian? The last does it sound like wine? Like Karstein, like wine? No one knows.
Well,
and
no,
the von Karsteins themselves argue.
No, they don't. For the family itself, there's no confusion. I've read it. There's no confusion.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, this is a matter of deep family pride, and is not unknown for the von Karsteins to flay the tongues of those who fuck it up.
Yeah.
With Steen. Oh yeah, if they pronounce it von Karstein, they kill you. It's von Karstein.
If you're wondering, that's actually a nod to Young Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not even kidding. It's very obviously a reference to Young Frankenstein, where that's the entire frickin' joke.
Mm-hmm. And there are many von
that's the thing. The character of Young Frankenstein, he originally would always correct them, going, "No, it's Frankenstein," until he embraces his ancestors' insanity and then changes his mind.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that name, there actually are mortal von Karsteins. Regardless, for various reasons, they married a vampire. Yeah, they're indebted. Blah 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 blah. The vampire, they aren't. This may be because they're not considered worthy of wearing the most famous names, awaiting great accomplishments or deeds or not. However, the vampire is still considered part of the von Karstein bloodline, and whatever their name, must remember their true allegiance. So, if you have the bloodline, you're von Karstein. But you could also have the bloodline in the literal sense, like you're born. It's why they're actual nobility. There are many von Karsteins out there. Mm-hmm. They take their name and their noble duties very seriously, and if they swear something upon their names, they're gonna do it because it's their pride. Their pride is so overwhelming that they cannot. That they're actually one of the few vampires that you can actually reliably get an oath from, because it would mean they'd have to, break an oath to themselves more than anything else.
Which, because of how vampires work, that's really harsh on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because vampires suffer from ennui, and they usually find ways to try to fight that. For the von Karsteins, I gotta lose my tongue. Sorry, I fucked it up. Von Karsteins, that's their title as nobility. They have to follow the perfect nobility.
Mm-hmm. And the von Karsteins are actually von Karsteins are one of the only bloodlines that really, obviously the Lamians know, but the von Karsteins know what they want, power and dominion, and they will take it. Unlike the Strigoi, who kind of waffle around in their graveyards, or the Lamians who play the soft power thing, if they want a castle, they're gonna take it.
Yep, and because they play a nobility, that's how they work. Anyway, here's the guy who destroyed the world. His name's Manfred. He sucks.
Yeah. He's also, as you can clearly see by his stat line, he has not surpassed Nagash. That's a pretty fucking good stat line, though, I will admit.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would really survive it.
Mm-hmm. Also, look at all those skills, talents, and traits.
It's almost like he's been alive for hundreds of years.
It's almost like this character is not someone you were ever intended to fight.
Although it does lead to one of the dumbest moments I can envision. Because we've got a couple of dumb Ulrich's Fury procs. I'm just envisioning some peasant. I mean, he'll come back. They come back. because of their bloodline curse.
I do want to say before, Manfred, one of the things that was interesting, Lady Annette, the first of a new generation, von Karstein Thrall, ex-charcoal burner.
Yeah?
Yeah, like, she's the eldest child. They flesh her out as she's not fully evil yet, because essentially she's still in that kind of, woo, I can do what I want phrase of immortality. She's not really involved in all the politicking. She's just having fun. It's not the horrible evil fun yet.
Not yet.
Because she was born a peasant. She's a slightly more down to earth. Slightly. She enjoys the finer things, but is not overindulgent. Most of all, she loves to travel. She does help recreate like von Karstein cults around, but that's mostly just for her to have fun in. She even has been known to fall in with adventurers that and travel from place to place.
Yeah.
It's because no one ever really, because it's one of the few places in the Warhammer world where adventuring party where no one really gets suspicious of a very powerful woman wandering around doing what she wants.
So some adventure hooks include their star-crossed lovers, where it's kind of the events of the plays that we kind of covered already. Bats in the walls, which
Yeah,
that's a nice nod. I've noticed, they're all based on other works.
Yeah. Now this one, Manfred von Karstein, you get the wonderful job of escorting of the guy you pretty sure is Manfred von Karstein. Why? What is he doing? Help!
Yeah, you're not going to get away with that. Although it would be funny if the turnip farmer plants him back into the ground for a few hundred years. That'd be hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
How would you feel if you sicked Manfred and a turnip farmer killed him because of like 5 Ulrich Fury proc?
Dude, I believe that he's going to have to spend quite a few millennia getting over it.
Like the turnip farmer beats him to death with a radish. Because he thinks the radish will scare off the vampire.
The radish paddle.
He gets that. He's Rolf, the son of a shepherd. He has the hat of discipline on. No, he destroys Manfred with the almighty triple shoe beating.
Mm-hmm.
Guide to Sylvania. So we kind of covered this a bit in the previous chapter.
There's some funny things in regards to this.
Yes,
like,
but the stream's getting long in the tooth.
I know, but I want to say this quote: Starlander, the dead are rising. Sylvanian, be it Karstingen already? A cartoon published in the Altdorf Spielzer.
Let me see. Where is it? Oh, here we go.
Page 86. Page 86. No, it's just the dead rising. Oh, whatever. It happens. Cool.
Be it Konstag already.
I get it. They take a perverse pride in the harshness of their life, seeing everyone else is soft for living in a warmer climate, using guns, associating with other races.
Yeah, and they're also very superstitious and believe in the worst stereotypes. They think dwarves drown cats, halflings routinely eat each other.
Mm-hmm. This goes back to the old things where they refused to ever deal with the dwarves despite being surrounded by dwarves because they had the insane belief that dwarves were behind the greenskins.
Mainly because every time dwarves warned people, they'd follow. Like they come from the same mountains.
I know, it's still stupid and hilarious.
But yeah, Sylvania's pretty
overgrown,
depopulated.
Full of mutation. Is an overgrown hellhole full of mutants.
Yes, Nagash was in the torture. I don't care about Age of Shit, Mar. I'm sorry, Imsit. I don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It just seems like a lamer version of Spelljammer.
Got a nice map. Along with some locations for things.
Here's some Sylvanian superstitions, though. So, because of persecution under the von Karsteins, has changed the attitudes of Sylvanians. They're rare, but the people have adapted, and here's some superstitions to replace religion. Rather than praying to gods, they watch for omens and perform good luck rituals. Spilled salt, spilled tears. Spilling salt's unlucky, so you have to run around your dwelling 3 times without spilling a grain of salt. Magpies bring messages. If you see a magpie, it means a message is coming. Sweep away dust. Basically, they use superstition instead of religion because of Vlad's edicts. And yeah, they're in horrible shape. They are in horrible, horrible shape. Sylvania sucks.
Yep. I just want to last thing because it's almost thing what they're saying. The Lucretia the mutant peasant.
Yep, here's Castle
Lucretia.
Drakenhof, and here's a good. I actually really like the
We're gonna get to the end
fantasy
of that.
maps, by the way, because they kind
Yeah,
of
they're done
remind me
really
of Tolkien's maps, and I really like those.
And they're quite detailed to give you some good stuff to play with.
The Red Abbey, Regakov, these are all major populated areas. You can't really say cities. There's large towns, but Sylvania is pretty underpopulated. Here's a vampire noble.
Mm-hmm. But more interestingly, because we kind of seen guys like this, Lucretia the mutant peasant.
Yep.
Born with a third arm growing out of her back, killed her mom being born, blamed her, made her life a living hell until her third hand hacked him to death with a cleaver. Now she lives alone on the farm, her father's body fertilizing the turnips. It's hard to scrape together a living in Sylvania, but she suffers no illusions. She had to keep her arm hidden under a cloak whenever strangers stop by. She knows that anywhere else in the Empire, she'd be burned by their neighbors. Those foreign fools will happily drown their own children for having an extra finger, while letting a filthy dwarf live among them.
Yeah. That's how Sylvanians actually think.
Special rules. Lucretia gets a bonus 10 to common knowledge about Sylvania, makes sense, has an extra limb mutation symptom of corruption. This grants no additional benefits, but it may allow her the element of surprise if she attacks with it, say, when you're not looking.
And here's some adventure hooks.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Back from the dead. Widows of the risen dead become active in Middenheim. They worship the von Karsteins as their saviors and practice in blood sacrifice and necromancy. You have to save the girl from being sacrificed.
The Castle of Drakenhof. Yep.
Yeah.
The next chapter is just all about essentially some of the mechanical stuff about vampires, like it goes into the things we've mentioned before, but actually how it actually works.
So some vampires don't really hide their nature, but honestly, that just makes it really easy for like a horde of vampire hunters to just end them.
Mm-hmm.
So what they have to do is actual little things like investigation. After watching a suspect for a lot of weeks, if they don't come out during the day, or never at all, or almost never, if they don't like to go on rivers, if they tend to not eat,
go near puddles,
don't go near puddles, or seem to get sick when brushed with a bit of demon's root or grave root, well, that gives you some good signs.
Mm-hmm. So, and mechanical things on how some stuff work. Doing a sleight of hand check with a mirror might allow you to, get a look at someone's reflection. You can do some stuff with perception checks. Damon's root. Do a herbalism test to find the white stuff. Apply it to the vampire. Warding wounds. Those foolish enough to self-inflict a warding wound may first take a dagger to their own flesh. It's an automatic 3 wounds, regardless, because you're doing it to yourself. A successful arcane knowledge test made to prepare the silver paste, etc. Essentially,
you have to actually have arcane knowledge necromancy, by the way, to do this.
Yeah, essentially, it's a way to sort of trap vampire and get vampires to do dumb things. Yep, vampires are witches. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Witch site's a great way to find vampires. It's extremely
useful. Warning wounds are useful, but the problem is witch hunters usually will denote them as chaos marks.
Mm-hmm. He has problem killing a vampire, and this is actually a role that I like that they added to make it slightly more possible to fight vampires. Focus strike. Essentially, it's you can get this in place of strike to injure, which just ups your crit range. But in this, it allows you to take like the focused aim shot, which usually gives you a bonus to your ranged attacks of 20 when you aim, and you can apply that to melee, giving up essentially a melee attack in exchange for hitting with a plus 20. Really useful with fighting something. Yeah, really useful. It goes into essentially what weapons are best against it. Silver and blessed weapons
are easily the best. By the way, I really like the vampire hunter image here.
Yeah.
Silver and of course, even chaos also weapons can work.
Yeah, as I mentioned, chaos and demon blades also work because it's infused with magic. Magic's all that matters.
Solid silver never loses their efficiency, but because of how soft it is, it doesn't work too often. But like, if you make a club out of it, it'll do.
And some new magic. Like I said, this goes into things, and even some new things like that Agent of the Shroud and the Blackguard. Yeah, this is when you finally got to become a Blackguard, even though they're pretty cool in the lore. You don't talk though. Knights and Balmers, and then Grave Wardens, and then Killer of the Dead. Interesting one thing, these guys are like slayers for humans because there's no way to leave this class. You die. You die. There's no way to leave.
Yeah, vampire hunters, if they leave the life, they almost always try to go for other things. Those who don't essentially go mad from the revelation and keep going until they drop dead.
Yeah, but as you can see with that stat line, if you go down this path, you better be good at what you're doing.
Notice that this man has gone full Ooga Booga and is just dual-wielding stakes. That should tell you a lot about the level of sanity you have.
He has the talent, for instance, he has the talent Frenzy and Menacing and Sixth Sense and Fearless.
Because he's insane, yeah.
Yeah. Knights of the Raven, those guys we mentioned, those vampire hunters, and a new, Knights of the Raven, and then Master Vigilance, a new, essentially these dudes are wizards who are, dark, they hunt the dark magic people.
Because you kind of need those, especially since mages can fall to dark magic corruption or necromancy.
And then, of course, there's the Strigani. You get to play a gypsy!
Yeah, so Strigani are from Strygos, and some of them are still vampire cultists, but not necessarily all of them.
Yep. Note, Strigani mystics are only available with Strigani blood. This will impose a Malice 10 on all fellowship checks with people in the Empire automatically.
Yep.
But they get some pretty interesting skills. They start with academic knowledge necromancy, even if they have no magic pips, because it's just kind of, taught to them.
Some of it, yeah. Hypnotism or trade, performer, secret signs, sleight of hand. Basically, you are not quite a charlatan. Like, your whole thing is you give people what they want, which is mystical advice. You can also become an astrologer, see Sigmar's Error, a bone picker, charlatan, entertainer, hedge wizard, rogue, or seer, which is a Tome of Corruption class.
Then now this is how the cool shit. Making a vampire.
Yep.
Vampires have a lot of these things called traits, which are essentially just additions added onto them, aren't really talents, because you don't purchase them, you just get them.
Because of that, they make a point up front. Yeah, vampires are not really something you use as a playable.
Well, yeah, they're not meant to be. You could, but that's not the intended purpose.
Should a player receive a blood kiss? Yeah, you're going to need to make a new character.
This is how you can make them if you just need a vampire. Just randomize it. So, and these are some flat skills to give them. There's also independent, which is, as I mentioned, just vampires that for whatever reason don't really fall into any of the bloodlines. They're typically a bit weaker than the average, though. But they have some interesting specialities.
Here's a good example. Lines. Look at the plus 60 for blood dragons. Now you know why it's not wise to fight them.
Or if you look at Strigoi and look at that, and look at their essentially, their stats are kind of mediocre compared to the others.
Yeah.
Well, Independence the most mediocre, but obviously.
Wait, from so we can make our orc vampire? Sure.
Yeah, just play a blood dragon template or an independent template to an orc.
I would say blood dragon, Strigoi out of desperation or spite, or independent. Independent would be your best bet, I think.
Also, note how they always have. Note how they just automatically get 6 movement, except the independents. But yeah, they're all boosted high. They all get magic pips except the independent. Even the fucking Strigoi.
Although the idea of giving him a Strigoi template's funny, because then you have an orc that somehow is able to use magic and is just screaming his head hurts.
The only thing the Strigoi really do have is that they're tougher. You can kind of see with their amount of wounds and having. They
have the highest based wounds, and that's kind of it, really. I mean,
they're just physically tougher, which is supposed to make up for the fact that they don't typically wear armor. Also, look, if you can really see how much the Strigoi get fucked, look at their starting talents that they get: Frenzy, Rover, and Strike Mighty Blow. When compared to the Blood Dragon, Disarm, Lightning Parry, Specialist, Cavalry, and Two-Handed, Strike Mighty Blow, Strike to Injure, Strike to Stun. Yeah, the Strigoi just get fucked.
Yeah, that's why I like him so much. Anyway, here are some made-up vampires. And then there's the customization method where you just create a compelling villain.
Templates.
Halfling and dwarf vampires, if they even exist, are so rare that most believe they cannot become. Elves can, though.
Yeah, it's just they wouldn't see use for it usually. And then there's these things that
So
some
they
bloodlines
are encouraging us to make an orc vampire because it's so dumb.
Mm-hmm. New trait. You get these new traits called the blood kiss things, like that gives you great power. And as I mentioned before, each kind of thing is a bit different. Like the
I'm
Strigoi,
envisioning
all
the
their
orc
stuff.
vampire in the moment Nagash, like, he starts claiming Nagash as Gorka Morka combined. Nagash is like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. Because Nagash doesn't want this.
Yeah, it's an abomination, even by his standards.
I love it. It's so dumb.
But yeah, here's that thing. It goes to some of the blood thing. Quick blood. You are so fast you can dodge shot fire from a pistol or snatch an arrow out of air. You can make a dodgeball attempt to avoid missiles. That is something the blood dragons get access to. It's under their blood gifts on page 105. Alongside the Lamians.
Oh, you already you skipped some of the stuff like Bat Form and Etheric Cipher.
Yeah, well, just because they kind of say this all again, yeah.
Okay. Blood Drain, Blood Sated, blah blah blah, Corrupted Innocence, Curse of the Revenant, Dark Majesty, Defy the Dawn. You can even tell the sun to go fuck itself.
Yeah, the record, the vampires aren't supposed to get all of these. They just get a certain amount of these as they advance up the vampire career.
Yeah, because that's kind of your career from now on.
Yeah, because if they had all these, they'd just be flat up pretty much unbeatable for some of these. Yeah. Also, the vampire careers are fucking pretty nasty too.
Silvered blood. Through some twisted magic, the argent metal already courses your veins. Rather than weakening your veins, it makes you immune. So some vampires actually laugh at silver.
Yeah, like I said, it's a bit of that uniqueness that some of them have.
You can also just randomly summon ancient corpses.
Or psychic, I like a psychic drain. You don't just sip blood. You suck their emotions.
So my idea for the orc vampire, I'd give him swarm form, where he just falls apart into a horde of squigs. What do you think?
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Like blood sucking squigs.
But yeah, last bit of comedy in regards to the requirements. They just give some talents, but in the vampire counts trappings. Evil laugh, magic item, 1d10 trusted followers.
Well, also there's vampires curses, so they get all the 6 weaknesses.
Yeah. Trapping. Yeah, the trappings. I just like the trappings. Evil laugh, rampant megalomania. you need that to become a vampire count.
Vampire thrall. I like how this guy's just eating a dead pigeon. Just a whole bowl. Vampire count, vampire lore, that's fine. Bleeding. A vampire can spend his round draining his prey's blood. If this happens during combat or otherwise is resisted, the victim loses 1d10% of his strength characteristic, as well as any of the wounds normally. If strength reaches 0, you're dead.
If you survive, it will return at a percent an hour. Yeah, also, come on, you gotta read the trappings for Vampire Lord. Army of the Undead, ambition beyond possibility, control over the fates of empires and kings, 2d10 fanatical devotees, enormous slayer, pride behind hubris, wealth beyond avarice, exit, infamy among the ages.
Yeah. I'm aware. I'm just also noticing that we have 30 pages to go and we're almost 3 hours in.
I just thought that was one of the funny part. Feeding, you need to feed on regular blood. Youngers need to feed every day. Olders don't. All vampires feed, though. They need vampires who have yet to enter a vampire career measure their time between feedings in the number of hours equal to their toughness bonus. Thralls measure it in days, counts in weeks, lords in months. All equal to your toughness bonus. So a vampire with like 80 toughness, that's a lord, he doesn't need to feed for 8 months.
So once the respite's passed, the vampire feels a strong need to drink. Vampire is entitled to a will test, and if they succeed, they can wait an additional hour, day, week, or month. After this time, if they've yet to feed, it becomes challenging, and it comes up to very hard. And here's the thing. If you fail at any of those steps, you're going to have to drink someone.
Someone, yeah.
Something. I mean, someone would be preferable, but even a thing can sometimes help.
And abstinence has its risks. If the will test resist the feeding ever fails, you gain frenzy and you start killing shit.
Not feeding is not only difficult to resist, but hard on your health. For every period of abstaining, you lose some of your strength. You also lose the strength if they fail, and usually blood from one adult human's enough. Regardless, the time since their awakening in this newborn stage is active if they are frenzied, so yeah.
Those with lack minions may recover through falling into deep torpor. It's torpor, essentially. Hibernation, you sleep for a year per point of strength you need to regain.
And the same state's entered regardless if the vampire strength drops below 10%, by the way.
Breeding.
And you gain an insanity point.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, most vampires don't do this because it's better to fucking drink on an animal at that point. Yeah. You have to embrace. You have to find. If they're unwilling, you have to drain them to 0 strength, blood kiss, then feed them some blood. Then 1d10 days later, they'll be back up.
Yep.
You can charm someone into doing this. Do that whole vampire seduction thing, or you can bring someone who's at near death into it. But now here's the things. They're weak. The curse of the vampires. I mentioned before that not all of them have the running water course, but it's there, as you noted in the vampire's curse.
There's barriers, which is mainly the necrarch weakness. Counting does. Here's the thing: the witch hunters, the more guys that said that it's bullshit. They're almost always right, but not always.
There is a 4% chance for this to happen.
It's not a useful. I'd have this be an independent vampire's weakness more often than the others.
Though I can imagine maybe a necrarch having it because the scholarly nature.
Yeah, necrarch, or maybe a particularly demented strigoi. Like I gotta count it because I gotta add it to my collection. I gotta add it to my kingly collection. Can't you envision like throwing a bunch of nails at a strigoi and it's counting to add to its kingly loot?
The king's
fire. Witchbane always works. Fire always fucking works.
Yeah, well, fire is always good, but some vampires are especially weak as their toughness bonus is negated, and it counts as magic in it,
which is like a troll.
Yeah, no, that's not. Trolls just don't regenerate that damage. These ignore their toughness and can't be regenerated.
So here's a fun fact: some vampire like garlic does occasionally work.
It's just very,
it
very.
Sucks, though.
You should try. You should try. Yeah, it just makes them a little woofy. Gromroll, dwarven gromroll. It's good. It's good shit, and it's gonna hurt vampires. And some just once again they can't use their toughness bonus on it.
Gromroll will always hit really hard. It's just some vampires are especially weak to it.
Same with Ithelmar.
I'd actually make Ithelmar almost as successful as Silver, since it's almost like true Silver.
Should a vampire lose a wound from an attack made by Ithelmar, they must succeed a challenging agility check or just catch fire.
Sounds about right. No reflection. Most vampires have this.
Many vampires are cursed. Religious symbols.
All vampires have this.
Sawdust. A few vampires can be repelled by the accruement of sawdust by those who handle corpses, such as sawdust or embalming fluid.
That's a very rare weakness.
Yeah, terror test.
Silver, almost all vampires except those who for some reason have it flowing through their veins.
Stakes. A stake to the heart is traumatic.
And it will hurt a vampire. It often can actually be immobilized too. Not always, though.
That's the sunlight thing. It's typically how it works. A vampire in direct sunlight, it halves their characteristics and will suffer a wound a minute, regardless of their toughness bonus. If you're just 0, sudden death. This penalty does not occur if if the day is overcast, or if you're walking around but a vampire walking around outside on such a day still needs to roll 1d10 every few hours, because the sky might clear.
But here's the thing, though. It's not just you lose this, you gain a wound per minute of exposure. Every round, which is usually a few seconds, you can just spontaneously burst in fire. And that's usually what causes the most damage.
Tears. You cannot suffer the tears of a virtuous mortal and can never feed on the innocent.
Yeah.
It's funny. One of those funny ones that they just can't. It's just you can't.
These are rare ones, and this is why actually a lot of the people in the earlier chapters struggle to understand their weaknesses, because there are vampires that actually have, like the guy with the garlic who choked to death. He's not entirely full of shit. It's rare, but there's vampires that can't stand it.
Warpstone. Some vampires hate Warpstone because it fucking
Usually
does horrible things
like
to them.
it.
Yeah, but some of them don't. And then finally, running water. Some vampires are unable to cross running water, receiving grievous damage from it. For the purpose of this curse, the water has to be a yard across, a foot deep, and have a current.
Rain doesn't count, by the way, Tech.
He's gone. He left like a few minutes
ago.
That's
fair.
He said he was tired. Simply smashing a vampire with water is not enough, nor is rain, or dumping buckets. And a vampire attempting to cross such a body of water will take 1d10 wounds per round spent in it, regardless of the toughness bonus.
I'm just imagining some idiot actually Sparta kicking a vampire into the ocean. Can't you envision it? Like this dwarven slayer's like, "Fuck you!" kicks him.
And then there's a few other ones, but these aren't even on the list because they're so fucking rare. Because they have their own unique insanities. Banquet of Blood. Those who drink blood too often are addicted to it, and if they don't drink blood 12 times, if a vampire drinks blood 12 times in one day, you gain insanity. For each drink beyond 12, this becomes harder and harder to do. Beast returned. A willpower. When you do feeding, it's harder to resist, going all the way. Blood kiss. Sometimes, taking the blood kiss fucks you over, or giving it. Critical hits, even though you no longer fear death. It's never fun to get mauled.
Especially since you can still die, and here's the thing. Taking the elixir of life, unless you're a von Karstein, Oblivion's all you really have at that end. Yeah, because remember, Nagash hates you. He'll just either torture you, like if you're interesting, he might keep you, but odds are you're just going to face Oblivion.
Finally, Melancholy of the Soul. Every 100 years you live, after your blood kiss, you gain insanity. Well, you have to make it. You may gain insanity for every century. You have to make will saves after every few hundred years because it's just one of those. What's the point of living anymore? And obviously, if you're in hibernation, you're sleeping it away. Obviously, so.
Vampires often are likely to gain insanity points from magical mishaps and encounters with chaos as well.
Yeah, don't.
But
fuck
it's not
around.
through failed terror tests.
And they have their own unique thing.
So here's some of their insanities. Blasphemous Rage, Exquisite Agonies, Firebug, Godly Conviction, Heart of Melancholy, Lost Heart, Profane Persecutions, Pursued Perfection, Steeped in Death, and Venomous Thoughts. All of which are insanities that you can pick up.
Yep, and in regards to the next few things, it's just regards to the unique lore of Nagash and Undeath.
Yep, the Blackguard.
That's some good stuff. Yeah, that's some good stuff.
It's cool. Like, I'm not gonna knock it. It's just, here's the magic that you can do.
Pretty much vampire only unless you really go down the path of necromancy.
Well, necromancers can also pick it up, but vampires most easily.
Yeah, but no, this is kind of specifically really reserved for vampires because you note the lore skill, Heinekarin.
Yeah.
That's only going to be taught to really big. That's only going to be taught really between the vampires themselves, and it'd be a very probably big no-no. And
prospective kin that they wish to raise.
But not.
Yeah,
like
ritual magic is almost certainly reserved for vampire counts.
Of course, ritual magic, more stuff. There's a lot of rituals actually here,
and there's consequences too. By the way,
There's even where you can summon You can even summon you can do that thing from the vampire coast and summon a ghost ship,
which is pretty cool.
New items.
Here's some cool magic items. Allegrin's Orrery. There's also the Blood Chalice, which that's the thing that Maravek kind of created. Not on purpose, but just through his actions. Because, killing a man chosen by the Lady of the Lake in such a way, that sometimes has effects, especially since beliefs kind of matter. So
It can
because of
restore
that,
your wounds.
yeah.
It can restore your wounds, and it can turn your your weapons powerful. The Karstein Ring gives you automatic 3 armor to all locations. You get regeneration, and if you die with this, you return to unlife at dusk. Well, this is mind you, this is only if a von Karstein wears this ring. Anyone else, get fucked.
Yep. Dagger of Jet. Anyone wounded by it loses 10% from either strength or toughness at the wielder's choosing, and neither characteristic may be reduced to 0. If the victim survives, 1% regenerates. So it's really useful in just crippling people.
This vampires thing, it's a empty frame. During this time, the vampire appears as if unmoving portrait itself. If the painting is destroyed, the vampire is slain. So essentially, a vampire can step in here and essentially hide from the sun.
It's pretty neat. There's necrotic powder, which magically ages anything it touches, with whether living flesh or solid steel. It's pretty useful. So you could basically blow the dust at people and watch as they turn into skeletons, a la Indiana Jones.
And then 2 swords. Vampire's Bane, a silver sword that essentially doubles your strength bonus against vampires. And the Wailing Blade. This was used to kill the Ghoul King. And the Wailing Blade, Vlad's personal sword, which, whenever you pull it out, the wailing of the blade makes everyone reroll fear tests, fear and terror against you, and it sends you into a murderous frenzy.
Fun fact, Vlad got it from the Dark Elves.
Yeah. And just some more, and this goes into just some stuff in regards to if you want to make interesting undead.
Oh wow, a ghoul that's able to speak. Not many can, because, regularly eating the dead or human flesh tends to make you a gibbering, crazy monkey thing. So ghouls. In the old world, starvation's common, and all too many times men will come close to death, and they have to commit the ultimate sin to survive. They'll feed on the flesh of their fellows.
It's a slow degenerative process, and due to their association with corpses, they get tied to dark magic, and vampires have a use for them. Dragoys especially have a use for them, yeah.
Yeah, see, their bodies start to mutate a la, Lovecraft style. And the more man flesh they eat, the hungrier they get, until eventually it just becomes gnawing, almost like vampires themselves, the hunger.
Then there's the skeletons and the zombies. We kind of all know what their deal is. It's a very basic thing that most necromancers can do, and they are the foot soldiers of any wannabe, conqueror's army.
They're not very good, but they will scare the shit out of people unexperienced with them.
They will drown you in the waves of the undead. Then there's the ghosts.
These guys are nasty.
Yeah, you need magic to fight these guys in some degree.
So yeah, bring a runesmith or a priest. That's kind of your only
like I said, there's a table here for random attributes you can put on the undead. Then there's the whites. These are the undead with something behind them, which is scary.
By the way, here are some of the characteristics of some of the undead. If you choose to be a weirdo. One of the results is child, and if you have to put down a child zombie, well, you're gonna get an insanity point.
Yeah, I mean it's weaker for it, but come on, it's fucked up. It's fucked up.
Then again, there are sociopaths who wouldn't feel a thing.
Yeah, half-eaten. This guy got munched on pretty good. Gaping hole in his body, giving him 3 fewer wounds.
Headless, which it doesn't impede its fight, and if you get a head blow, though, it means nothing.
Yeah, just woof.
And veterans just make them tougher. Whites are an interesting lot. Basically, they're undead that can think. It has its own will, its own mind. They will very often serve, but some are just too independent to really do that.
Also, unlike skeletons, which kind of just do basic movements, these things retain, even if they don't have the most intelligence, they retain all of the unconscious knowledge to where they know how to swing their swords in the they don't just hack, they know how to swing. They know how to ride a horse. They know how to couch a lance. They know how to do all these intrinsic things that makes them warriors.
And
So,
they usually either have fragments of the old personality or develop a new one over time.
hmm
And there's greater
also,
necromancy as well.
Also, their weapons are usually coated with some sort of horrible dark magic, which makes it awesome to fight them. And by no awesome means terrible.
Here's a spider ogre thing.
Ugh.
Yeah, because spider wood sprite's bad enough. Let's take a giant spider and fuse it with an ogre.
Yeah, the netquarks are awesome, aren't they?
They're amazing. Vampire campaign. So players as vampires. So while they do discourage it because you're really broken, here's the thing. At the end of the day, they don't give a shit.
It's a game.
I mean, they try to justify, like, several paragraphs, like, here's why you probably shouldn't. And vampires are amazing villains, so using them as heroes is a terrible waste of dramatic potential. So
Yeah,
they're like, come on, don't do this. Oh God, you really want to? Fine, asshole.
Yeah, you could throw it probably wouldn't be a good idea to have one vampire in the group because that's
bullshit.
A clear way. That's a clear way to just say who's what would be more important. But a party full entirely of vampires, definitely more possible.
Although there is the comical, everyone's a different bloodline, so you have
hate.
I'm just envisioning like the ultimate curse, where you somehow have a Strigoi and a Lamian not killing each other silently through proxies.
They're trying to kill each other silently through proxies, but they're working together publicly.
It's just funny. I think that's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, but like an all like Lamian game about social engineering and stuff like that could be
fun. Or you could be an all Strigoi game and you're trying to set up like this border prince. Like you want to reclaim Lost Strigos, but but you know you're not delusional about it, so you're trying to do what the Black Prince, what was his name? The Black Prince is doing.
Yeah, Urash.
Not Urash, the other guy, Gashnug.
Von Karstein's ruling over Sylvania, or maybe
that could be a fun one where you're trying to overthrow corrupt Sterlanders, even though you're also a monster.
Yeah, it even notes here in combining bloodlines, you might want to combine bloodlines, but this opens up so many avenues of betrayal and blood fighting. No bloodline would ever work with the Strigoi. That's not 100% true. The Von Karsteins sometimes practically enslave them.
Would, yeah.
Yeah, they practically enslave them. The Necrarchs are considered traitors.
They are?
Because they are. The Blood Dragons hate the Lamians, and the Lamians despise the Von Karsteins.
So what you're saying is every one of them gets represented. No, I have a dumb one. I have an even dumber one. You're all vampires from Cathay, from the line of that one guy, the evil vizier.
They hop.
They hop.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, don't you want to play hopping vampires as you, like, I don't know, plot to destroy the chaos as dwarves?
But yeah, and then there's the vampire villain.
Foster a revolt from the goblins again.
Then there's what a vampire can be, the beast. Probably, the monster, the thing that you fight, the thing you hunt.
This is usually a Strigoi.
Yeah, usually Strigoi, though it could theoretically apply to pretty much anything but the Lamians.
A demented Necrarch is another one.
Mm-hmm. As it says, the particularly fit the bill here would be
completely nuts. Yeah. That also works.
The Strigoi are the best examples of the forced dwelling, but a bloodthirsty blood dragon or Necrarch could fit the bill. Or a Von Karstein as an urban serial killer.
Jack the Ripper Von Karstein could be interesting. Or I think also a Lamian could do that really well.
Yeah. So I think they'd be a bit more picky. The insane scholar, the mad necromancer. Necrarchs obviously.
Necrarchs are the most common, although Von Karsteins and Lamians also can. Particularly philosophical Strigoi can too. They are fairly educated at times.
Mm-hmm. The Paragon, the insane, few emotions.
The Blood Dragons.
Yeah, the Blood Dragons who have a personal grudge against the PC characters. Like maybe, actually, good example. A rival of the group gets embraced by a blood dragon, and essentially goes out of his way to do whatever he can to upstage and essentially make their lives miserable.
And to claim their fame by actually doing the deeds themselves.
Mm-hmm. Also, the Tempter, hell, they may not even be a rival, they might be an ally. But it's an ally in the sense that it's not an ally you want, because who wants a fucking vampire watching your deeds with great interest?
That actually is. I actually had that with I rolled up a border prince that was this. He was a blood dragon who basically moved to the borderlands to get cut his teeth on orcs and have fun with it. And he just runs a little hunting lodge, and he's respected by some of the other border princes for being this very martially inclined warrior. His dogs are a bit scary though, mainly because he has a fuckload of wolves.
And then there's the puppet master, the one who's pulling the strings all behind the
Lamians
scenes, never to be seen.
Very commonly this.
Though a Von Karstein or even a Von Karstein could also, or a Blood Dragon could have played
And
this.
Gajnuk the Black Prince is essentially this.
Yeah, and then there's the Dreadlord, the classic, the tyrant, the great overlord. This is Strahd sitting in his castle.
This is essentially the Von Karsteins. Not always though. Like these are these are the archetypical that you'd use for each bloodline, but all the others can usually have some relevance, although some are much better at it than others. Like you probably won't run into a Lamian serial killer, but you can.
I actually like this. Yeah, I like some of the things here. Or twist, the player characters might live in Sylvania or discover that their own lord is in fact a vampire, a lord whom they might have previously sworn in passionate allegiance. Now they are part of the evil armies the outsiders have come to exterminate. Will they lead a revolution against their lord or become a turncoat against their people? Yeah, the next part is more just GM notes. The next page is just GM notes.
Just how you could help. And last but not least, creatures of the nights.
Wolves essentially.
Or undead wolves, yeah.
Grave grass, undead grass, because the plants die too.
Yep.
Never thought about being killed by, like, you thought maybe about undead trees, but never think about undead grass.
Yep, basically it's like a booby trap. It just kills you.
Well, it doesn't kill you, it starts sucking away your wounds.
Yep. Scuttling hands, so if you want to have Thing from the Addams Family like sneak up on you at night and strangle you, this is it.
Shiners, giant amoeba that live in water. Undead amoeba.
Well, yeah, they're not quite amoeba, but they are.
They're amorphous blobs that are resistant to normal attacks. Magic blades that float around and try to kill you.
I like Shiners just because it's so silly. Because I'm just can you imagine? Like, I got it. Here's my idea for a dumb vampire. Okay, so it's Strigoi, right? He has become the greatest furniture manufacturer in his small shit part of Reichland, because he has a horde of giant amoebas that ooze themselves all over his furniture.
Ugh.
Come on, don't you want furniture made by a dude with a giant monster face?
I think that just turned into a Wicker Man. If you look at the next page, the next giant automatons made of fire and filled with people.
Unholy blades, yep, great. Wickerman. Oh, I actually threw this at you guys once. I didn't know they had stats. I'd have thrown it at you guys with these stats if I knew about this at the time.
Well, now you know.
Cool. Oh, like that's actually really cool.
Yeah, winged nightmares, flying horses.
Undead hippogriffs, griffins, wyverns.
Or sometimes it's just a horse with fucking wings attached to it.
And sometimes when a powerful necromancer dies, they're so scared of death they'll just come back as a wraith.
A wraith wisp.
Zombie dragons, which that's
the slaughter margin, impossible.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah. Where's does it say slaughter margin impossible? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
It's underneath weapons.
I mean, it is possible in the sense that if you're lucky with a nasty hit.
But this is its slaughter margin essentially uses the stat line of one person going up against this.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Turnip farmer man, if he Ulrich's Furied 5 times, he could do it. You can see why that won't work.
I'd say 7 times because of his look at that toughness bonus.
True. So Grendel could do it if his luck held like it did against that charnel beast.
But yeah, that's like the first it'd be a opposite. But in any general sense, like if I threw this
you'd
at
have to
the
have
party,
a whole party
this is,
and you'd be dead
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, the players would say, "This is fucking impossible. Why should you do this?"
If it was a small army, like I don't know, a couple hundred guys, yeah, you can take it.
Most of them die,
dead, but yeah, you could take it.
And that's where the session, and that's where this ends. Literally, all that's left is the in the index.
Yep. This was a long boy, but I think it was worth it, and it's a great way to end Spoop Month because hey, we don't usually get to talk about Warhams.
I will. If you just flip 2 more pages, though, there's a little cute little thing at the very end, the last page.
Let me show this to you guys. It's a precious thing. Beware the night.
Beware the night.
Aw.
Fear the princes of blood.
Aw.
That's just it. Yeah, that's just ending Spook Month with that.
So we usually actually give our ratings. I think I forgot last week because I don't know, a smooth brain. This is a really good book.
Yeah, this is a good book. It does exactly what it needs to do. It fills out a setting, fills out characters, how to use the characters, and even has the capabilities for lots of plot hooks.
I'd actually let me correct it. I think I'd actually tip it just slightly into amazing, and here's why. I've read Rogue Crowns, which is the Border Print supplement. That's a good one too, by the way. But this one's actually pretty well organized. You know, it's structured very well. I'd say Tome of Corruption's a better book because of what it gives you. But I think in terms of structure and and design, this book is kind of tops for what I've seen out of the supplements so far. Just because of how it does a really good job at condensing information. It does a really good job in organizing it. So there's no point where I look at what they ask me to do and go, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, also the tables are less insane.
Because Rogue Crowns has several tables, which honestly, screw that. The first chapter is essentially how to set up the borderlands, you know, the border prince area that you're going to work with. And the way it's generated, they don't even really specify how the hell it works. Like, it does an okay job at doing things like creating ruins and giving you hints for how to, you know, stat them out and plot them out, but ugh. This, on the other hand, no. Simple tables, gives you a lot of lore dump, gives you some interesting stuff to play with. So, yeah, I think this is a great ending for Spoop Month. I don't know what we're going to do after this. I know, unfortunately, Chalt's going to be something we have to do at some point or another.
God help us.
Hell, that's not going to be for a little bit at least.
So,
yeah, thanks for hanging out with us for about a little over 3 hours. It's just there was a lot to cover. Just before I forget, I did provide a Discord link to any new people who've shown up. You can click on it and join our little Discord group and insert standard YouTube begging here. I don't like doing it. So have a good night, everyone.
And don't let the vampires bite.
Also, make sure to put like holy symbols of Sigmar or whatever around your house.
But don't stuff garlic in your mouth.
You'll choke to death.
Dumb.
You're dumb. You are dumb!